The port town of Isen was the ultimate hotspot for sea travel in the central continent. Strategically located, it secured trade routes not just for the Dolta Republic and the southern continent, but also for the eastern continent. Basically, it was the ancient world's version of a super important shipping hub. But plot twist, a few decades ago it was a total mess. Back in the day, southern pirates had taken over Isen, turning it into a lawless land where all sorts of shady business went down. Think of it like the Wild West, but with more pirates and less cowboys. Enter Carly, our knight in shining armor. After becoming a proper knight of the Draker family, she took on the mission to clean up the pirate infestation in Isen. Carly wasn't just any knight, she was on a mission to turn Isen around. Fast forward 5 years, and Carly had done the impossible. The pirates were gone, and Isen was finally safe. The town was so clean of pirates it was like they had never even been there. Carly had truly outdone herself. Under the Draker's protection, Isen transformed into the greatest port city. The surviving pirates? They hightailed it to the deathly water south of the Dolta Republic, probably to lick their wounds and plot their next move. Carly's incredible achievement didn't go unnoticed. She was acknowledged for securing the trade routes in Isen and became the youngest Guardian Knight. This was a big deal, a feat that even someone as accomplished as Abel, before his regression, couldn't pull off. Cut to the present, and Carly is standing in front of a group of students on a podium. She's come a long way from her pirate fighting days and is now sharing her wisdom with the next generation. Zeke Draker never expected that the important figure standing before him would be his eldest sister. Not only that, but she was also in the middle of a battle of succession against Abel Draker. It made sense that he couldn't recognize her face. Before his regression, Carly Draker had already changed a lot. Carly cleared her throat, ready to address the assembly. Her voice boomed through the hall, commanding silence with a single word. The students were instantly terrified. Zeke thought to himself, what else were they supposed to do when a Guardian Knight yelled at them like that? Carly began her speech, pointing out that their attitude and behavior were far from the disciplined Valhalla they were supposed to represent. She reminded them that the peace they enjoyed was not granted without cost, but brought about through the blood, sweat, and tears of those who came before them. Carly wasn't done yet. Knowing the cost of peace wasn't enough, she declared. It had to be shown in their actions, their training, their every move. Zeke could only stare in bewilderment, wondering if this was really the same Carly he knew. With a dramatic slam of her hand, Carly drove her point home. Strict rules and rigorous training were the only way to forge a true knight. Zeke couldn't help but think she was channeling some serious young boomer energy. As the assembly wrapped up, murmurs filled the air. Some cadets found Carly's speech brutal. Others missed the meaningful advice from Sir Duke. Zeke sighed, wondering if any of it had even made an impact. But his thoughts quickly shifted to Diego, that eccentric guy who always marched to the beat of his own drum. Speak of the devil. Diego came bouncing over, full of energy after his 5-hour composition session. He was off to finish his Valhalla tour, leaving Zeke shaking his head as he watched him go. But maybe this was for the best. With Diego off doing his own thing, Zeke could focus on hunting for talents and living his life at Valhalla. And who knows, maybe he'd even find Tarakan's secret library in his downtime. Zeke took a step, ready to start his search. But before he could even get started, a voice called out his name, stopping him in his tracks. Turning around, he found Carly, looking a bit desperate as she called out to him, asking if he could spare her some time. They found themselves in the Valhalla public training room, a place where warriors could test their mettle. Without a word, Carly drew her sword, the gleam of the blade catching his eye. His eyes widened as he recognized the mithril sword, a rare and precious metal, said to be a gift from the Holy Kingdom. He recalled that the Holy Kingdom had gifted Carly with 100% purity mithril sword and armor as a token of gratitude for clearing out the pirates that plagued their borders. The gear had earned her the alias White Silver Knight, due to her striking appearance when clad in it. Carly wished for him to show his abilities without holding back. He stretched, realizing that this was an invitation to a duel. It seemed like she had heard the rumors of him reaching the level of a Blue Knight due to his usage of Aura Blade. Well, it looked like it was time to show her what he could do. Zeke slammed his sword down, ready to show his abilities without holding back. With a swift motion, he drew his sword, determined to give it his all. He pondered, knowing he wasn't the only one curious about his abilities. Why put himself at a disadvantage? The Drakers followed the law of the jungle. Reaching Blue Knight level was already a big deal, but if word got out about his Red Knight potential, The Zimmons family would stop at nothing to take him down. And the patriarch? He'd try to control him. No thanks. What did being from a transcendent family even mean? He bolted, having no intention of following the family's orders. Their blades clashed, the sound echoing as the duel began. Carly swiftly deflected his sword downward, her movements precise and calculated. A sharp pain shot through his nose as her blade grazed it. He quickly paused his healing factor, knowing that Carly, being a guardian knight, might notice his rapid recovery. No need to spill all his secrets just yet. Their blades clashed again and again, the sound of metal ringing through the air as Carly pushed him back with relentless force. He was on the defensive and she was not letting up. He jumped back, creating some much-needed space between them. A quick breather wouldn't hurt, but Carly wasn't having it. With a powerful strike, she sent him flying back. She was really putting her all into this fight. Zeke couldn't help but wonder if he really had to go all out with the red level. Limiting himself to blue 131 wasn't exactly making this fight a walk in the park. Carly, however, was not about to let up. She bolted toward him with the speed of a lightning strike. Before Zeke could even process, Carly was already flying from the ceiling straight towards him. Talk about a fast girl. Zeke barely managed to block her attack. The clash sent a shockwave through the air, making it clear this was no ordinary fight. The impact was so intense that it caused a huge explosion, lighting up the entire scene. This was getting serious. Carly's momentum carried her forward, overtaking Zeke. She mused that anyone else would have been split in two by now, acknowledging the excellence of his sword. Despite the intensity of the battle, Zeke couldn't help but smile. There was something thrilling about this fight, something that made his heart race with excitement. Zeke leaped back, his mind racing. A full-on battle against a red while limiting his aura to blue levels? This was going to be interesting. Carly wasn't having it, though. She questioned if he was letting his guard down just because he created some distance between them. Zeke smiled, a memory sparking in his mind. He had forgotten something crucial. Carly swung her giant aura blade, the sheer force of it resembling a giant's sword. She lived up to her reputation, and Zeke was about to feel it. The area was left in ruins, with a gaping hole marking the aftermath of their intense clash. A massive explosion erupted, sending shockwaves through the already battered landscape. Carly looked at the devastation, realizing she had gone all out, perhaps a bit too much. The dust began to settle, revealing the extent of the damage caused by their fierce battle. Through the haze, Zeke emerged, walking through the hole left by the explosion. Zeke stepped forward, wiping his face and thinking he had managed to pull off a convincing act. The training ground was a mess, looking like a tornado had gone through it. Zeke's little act had really done a number on the place. Carly sheathed her sword, looking at Zeke with a mix of awe and respect. She couldn't help but admit, he was pretty amazing. Zeke was barely standing, struggling to keep his balance. Carly was shocked. She couldn't believe he had blocked her strike. He was way better than she had thought. Carly let out a sigh, realizing that Zeke was really something else. But she had other things on her mind. There was something she needed to take care of. Suddenly, Zeke collapsed, falling to the ground. Carly rushed to his side, panicking. She couldn't help but worry about him. Zeke was in rough shape, his internal wounds were pretty serious. He was really feeling the pain. Carly quickly dug through her bag, looking for something to help him. She found what she was looking for and popped it open, ready to tend to Zeke's injuries. Carly handed over the family's high-tier recovery potion, reminding him to drink it slowly. He took a sip, the liquid shimmering as it went down. As the potion worked its magic, his wounds began to close, his strength returning bit by bit. Suddenly, his class skill healing factor kicked in, speeding up his recovery. He wondered if anyone would notice just how powerful this potion really was. But this was all part of the plan. He had intentionally reactivated his healing factor, keeping up the act. He wanted to hide his true strength, making everyone believe he was barely at the level of a blue knight. When the giant's blade came at him, he barely defended himself, letting it hit him on purpose. Somehow, a tiny opening appeared right before impact, and everything went smoothly from there. He took Carly's aura into his body, but since his body didn't allow the use of aura, he naturally resisted it. Carly would just think he pushed himself too hard, believing his internal wounds were from overdoing it. With a soft groan, he sat up, feeling much better. Carly asked if he was feeling okay, her voice filled with concern. Feeling much better, he expressed his gratitude to Carly, thanking her sincerely for her help. A moment of silence passed as he gathered his thoughts. He then turned to his sister and Zeke, telling them to feel free and be at ease. The scene shifted to the outskirts of Atlas, where an empty alleyway set a quiet stage. In the quiet alley, a figure mentioned that tea had been prepared, specially shipped by air from the east, just as he liked it. He thanked them warmly, though he wondered how far the tale of his tea preference had spread. Even the patriarch had mentioned it, making him curious about the reach of this seemingly trivial detail. A brief pause followed as the scene prepared to transition. Inside a surprisingly luxurious carriage, he marveled at the interior, never expecting such elegance from its plain exterior. The magic of camouflage was at play, hiding the true nature of a guardian knight's carriage. He pondered the day's events, from training rooms to secretive carriage rides, wondering if the subject at hand was something that needed to be kept under wraps. The mention of the butchering knight sent a chill through the air, hinting at darker themes to come. The mood shifted as someone declared the need for more power to stop Abel Draker, setting the stage for a deeper conflict. Questions flew about what was meant by that, clarifying that Abel was indeed the second son of the Draker. The speaker didn't take the topic lightly and promised to explain from the beginning. Despite the family's oath of neutrality, Abel had broken the creed by getting involved in national disputes, siding with the Rome Empire against Alencia. It became clear that Abel had been making his move for a while, leaving everyone wondering if the Four Seasons Fortress was aware of this. The response was blunt: the fortress was overlooking it, and things were about to get messy. The Four Seasons Fortress was divided, with supporters of the Empire appearing in the Elders' Assembly, giving Abel the backing he needed. It wasn't that all the Elders were on the Empire's side, but their neutrality was basically just vibes at this point. Some Elders were still trying to maintain neutrality, but let's be real, it was only a matter of time before they all went over to the dark side. The situation was looking pretty bleak. Time was ticking, and waiting for Abel to get caught wasn't an option. If left unchecked, things would devolve into a full-blown war. Carly's predictions were spot on, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. 3 years had already passed since the regression, and the weight of time bore down with urgency. The future loomed dark, with the Drakers and the Rome Empire under Abel's command set to ignite a continental war in just 7 years. The thought of countless lives lost, skies blackened, and lands soaked in blood painted a grim picture. This wasn't just a prediction, it was a future that had to be stopped at all costs. With that in mind, a resolve hardened. No more waiting, no more hesitation. Action was the only path forward. Power was the key. Abel's influence over the higher-ups of Draker was undeniable, and he likely assumed the lower ranks would fall in line. But true knights didn't blindly follow authority, they stood for justice and righteousness. Staying true to those beliefs, the plan was set: rally the knights around the Four Seasons Fortress. This wasn't about blind loyalty but about standing up for what was right. Yet, there was no intention to force anyone into this fight. The younger knights had bright futures ahead, especially as pure blood awakened. Their paths were their own to choose. And with that, it was clear what kind of person Carly Draker was: someone who understood the weight of the future and the importance of choice. Carly Draker was a force to be reckoned with, her will unbreakable as steel. But here's the thing about her: she wasn't all about brute force. If justice was on the line, she could bend like a reed in the wind, adapting to whatever the situation demanded. And let's not forget, she was the real deal, righteous and pure, like a knight straight out of a fairy tale. That tiny opening in her giant's blade? Yeah, that might have been a little slip-up on her part, all because she was worried about someone else. Classic Carly, always putting others before herself. But hey, even heroes have their moments of doubt. In the worst-case scenario, she could end up branded as a traitor. A heavy thought, but she was asked to think it over carefully. Carly thanked her sister for the concern, because family always looks out for family, right? But Carly being Carly, she wasn't one to back down from a challenge. She had already made her decision, and nothing was going to change her mind. Even if she was still a bit green, she was ready to dive headfirst into the path of chivalry. No fear, no hesitation, just pure determination. And with that, she was ready to take on whatever came her way. Zeke thanked her, and just like that, they were off to the Valhalla research facility. No turning back now. Carly couldn't believe the corruption ran this deep, even before the Continental War. It was like finding out your favorite childhood hero had feet of clay. Carly was ready to dip out of the Drakers early. No cap. She wanted to avoid the mess of Abel's counter moves while trying to rally enough troops for the Continental War. Classic case of wanting to avoid the drama. But then she thought, if there's someone out there with the same goals, maybe she didn't need to leave the family after all. Like finding out your squad actually wants to go to the same concert as you. Actually, staying in the family could be a win-win. She could keep tabs on Abel's moves, and with Carly at the forefront, she wouldn't have to face the backlash alone. Perfect setup, really. But to make this work, Carly needed to officially become a knight and turn public opinion in her favor. Even though she was the firstborn and a guardian knight, she wasn't a pureblood awakener or from one of the great families. In her past life, Abel's forces pushed her back and she failed to take control of the Drakers. But if a pureblood awakener like her became an official knight and supported Carly, the scales might just tip in their favor, even if just barely. So, Carly ended up playing the part of a knight, even though it wasn't really her vibe. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, right? Anyway, she was almost there. The end was in sight, and she could practically taste the victory. Valhalla Research Facility, Great Central Library. The final destination. Carly was ready to make her move. Carly stepped forward, her heart pounding with anticipation. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. A mechanical voice echoed, announcing her arrival at the destination. But as she looked around, she couldn't help but wonder if this was really the secret library she had been searching for. Her expectations crumbled as she took in the sight before her. This wasn't at all what she had imagined. There was nothing special or meaningful here. It was just an ordinary room, devoid of any grandeur or mystery. She had thought that a place guided by the system would hold something extraordinary, like the heart of Bahamut or the hidden Fong. But alas, it seemed like she had come all this way for nothing. Just as disappointment began to set in, a notification chimed in. A data restoration point had been detected. Carly's curiosity piqued. Maybe there was more to this place than met the eye. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what might come next. Her eyes scanned the room, trying to make sense of the cryptic message that appeared before her. What was Isekai? Before she could dwell on it further, another notification popped up. The secret library of another administrator, Tarakan Draker, had been detected and a connection was being established. Carly's mind raced. Another administrator? Did this mean Tarakan was another user of the same system as her? Carly considered that if the bookshelf only appeared in reaction to the system, it made sense that it had not been discovered until now. The information within Administrator Tarakan Draker's secret library was now part of Zeke Draker's system. From that point forth, she would always be able to access it. She decided to think about anything difficult later, as judging by the titles, there was not anything special. Carly requested the system to find what would help her growth the most at that moment. The system confirmed her request and found a book matching her needs. Carly's curiosity piqued as she waited for the system to reveal the book. Her eyes widened as she saw the title of the book. Could it be the one? The title read, Secret Technique of the True Dragon's Swordplay. Carly was intrigued, as she had never heard of such a technique. She decided to look into it further, checking the author's name. The anticipation built as she flipped to the author's page. The author was Shelton Draker, the close advisor to the hero King Kaiser. Carly was taken aback, as this was a name she recognized. As the door creaked open, it was clear that this was going to be a deep dive into some serious lore. The vibe was set for a history lesson that Carly wasn't expecting today. Shelton Draker, the advisor to the hero king, was in full-on study mode. He was about to spill the tea on why he even created the True Dragon swordplay in the first place. With a quill in hand, he began to write, explaining that the whole dragons and humans thing started with the great hero king. Thanks to him, even regular humans could make contracts with dragons, which was a big deal. But here's the catch, dragons weren't just helping humans out of the goodness of their hearts. They felt pity for us because, let's face it, humans lacked the special traits that other races had. After that, the number of contractors skyrocketed, and they spread across the continent, building civilizations left and right. But with great power came great worries, and Shelton was feeling it. He was low-key terrified of the dragons. If they were helping humans out of pity, what's to stop them from turning on us just as easily? This single thought haunted him. If his fears ever came true, the consequences would be catastrophic. The weight of his concerns hung heavy in the air, setting the stage for whatever came next. The weight of his concerns hung heavy in the air, setting the stage for whatever came next. Without any means to resist, humanity would face complete annihilation in a single day. Left with no choice, the search for a way to combat dragons began. Magic seemed like the obvious solution, the first thought that came to mind. But magic was the first gift granted to humans by dragons. Dragons inscribed circles into human hearts, enabling them to cast magic despite being unable to generate mana on their own. Attempting to fight dragons with magic would be a fool's errand. The next thought was the elemental sword wielded by the Hero King, a power feared even by dragons. However, that power was only granted to those who inherited the blood of the fairy monarch. Determined to find a new power that only humans could wield, he immersed himself in research. From the primitive swordsmanship of the North to the mysterious powers of the East, there was nothing he did not try to transcend the limits of his own humanity. Ironically, the one who aided him most enthusiastically in his research was the Hero King's contracted dragon, Kronos. Kronos claimed to help because he found it enjoyable, but there was a strange determination in him, too strong to simply accept his given answer as truth. Continuing his research, he and Kronos stumbled upon aura. It was neither elemental force nor mana, but a power that only humans were able to wield. Finally discovering a clue after the Hero King had left for the spirit world, he continued his research on aura. It was not long before his research bore fruit, working out the theory and application of aura, as well as the style of swordsmanship utilizing it, and writing and distributing the true dragon's swordplay. But as fate would have it, his efforts seemed to be in vain. In a world where dragon-made artifacts offered a quick and easy power boost, who would bother with a technique that required actual effort? The true dragon's swordplay was basically the medieval equivalent of choosing stairs over an escalator. At least the dragons hadn't gotten their hands on it yet, but Zeke had a feeling that someday, someone would need these techniques. And if they were reading this, he hoped they'd understand the weight of his words. Zeke's will echoed through the pages, urging whoever found this book to master the techniques within. And just like that, the book appeared, as if it had been waiting for him. The Kronos Kingdom's treasury was rumored to be packed with insanely powerful artifacts. The catch? A 3-month time limit. This wasn't going to be as easy as learning elemental sword techniques. Guess it was time to buckle down and focus on the true dragon's swordplay. Well, that was that. Sheltern had been right all along. No one knew exactly how long it had been since the Hero King's era, but just as predicted, the dragons had betrayed humanity, sparking the Liberation War. In the aftermath of the war, someone was digging through the secret library, desperate for any useful intel. They were really hoping for something juicy like Tarakan's journal because apparently the Liberation War wasn't dramatic enough. The system took a moment, probably scrolling through ancient files, trying to find something relevant. Finally, the system responded with the digital equivalent of a mic drop. One record found, and it was exactly what they were looking for. The magic video record of Tarakan's journal was about to play. Cue the dramatic music. Suddenly, the space around started shifting, like a bad trip or a really intense VR experience. Confusion set in as the surroundings morphed into something unfamiliar. Where even was this place? It seemed like the system had cooked up this space, but something felt off like a glitch in the Matrix. The scene hung in suspense, waiting for whatever came next in this wild ride. The suspense was killing everyone, and then suddenly, nothing happened. Like literally nothing. Just a blank panel staring back like it forgot its lines. Awkward. And then, still nothing. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife, but the page just stayed blank. Someone really needed to check on the artist. Just as everyone was about to call it quits, a sudden notification popped up out of nowhere. Indomitable mental defense had been activated. Okay, things were getting real now. Whoever was experiencing this suddenly felt like it was way too real. Like next level real. No turning back now. And then, another blank panel. The suspense was killing. But also, what was going on with these empty frames? Finally, a voice echoed out of the void, uttering a single word, Ahmet. Okay, so maybe the blank panels were just building up to this dramatic reveal. The voice continued, identifying the mysterious figure as the evil dragon Bahamut. Plot twist alert. This was getting juicy. And then another dramatic pause. The voice trailed off with an ominous and leaving everyone on the edge of their seats. Turns out, the guy had been standing right behind the protagonist the whole time, and no one even noticed until he decided to speak up. Sneaky much? The protagonist was still processing the fact that someone had been lurking behind him unnoticed when suddenly, things got even weirder. Before he could react, the mysterious figure just walked right through him like he was some kind of ghost. The protagonist was left stunned, questioning if this meant he was literally inside the recording now. Talk about a plot twist. As the shock settled, the scene began to shift, hinting at something even more intense about to unfold. The atmosphere tensed up, and you could almost hear the dramatic music building up in the background. It was starting. The legendary battle that had been talked about for generations was finally about to go down. The stage was set, and the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Everyone was on the edge of their seats, waiting for the first move. Then, out of nowhere, a voice boomed, calling out Tarakan for hesitating. No pressure or anything, right? The air hung heavy with tension, the kind of silence that makes you want to yell. Well, say something. But nope, just awkward quiet. Suddenly, the silence shattered like glass as a voice boomed, dripping with disappointment. It was clear Tarakan had seriously messed up this time, and the shock on his face said it all. This was not the pep talk he was hoping for. Plot twist alert. Turns out Tarakan was Bahamut's contractor, and the revelation hit like a ton of bricks. The room was spinning with confusion, and the weight, what? Energy was strong. But hold up, if Tarakan was Bahamut's contractor, then what was the deal with the whole Dragonslayer legend? The one where he supposedly subjugated Bahamut? The mental whiplash was real, and the confusion? Next level. The shock was so intense, you could practically see the question marks exploding over everyone's heads. This was the kind of twist no one saw coming. A beat of silence passed, the kind that makes you wonder if the world just glitched for a second. Then chaos erupted. The confusion was so thick you could cut it with a knife, and honestly, it was kind of hilarious. Someone in the background was clearly losing it, mumbling about not being able to understand a single word. Mood. Absolute mood. Zeke Draker was not having a great day. He yelled at the system, demanding if it could do anything about the chaos unfolding. Classic tech support moment, right? But of course, the system responded with the digital equivalent of a shrug, stating that the administrator's request could not be confirmed. Thanks for nothing, tech support. Silence fell, the kind that makes you want to scream into the void. A random emoticon popped up, as if to say, well, this is awkward. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Everyone was just standing there, processing the madness. Suddenly, a question hung in the air. Could a contracted dragon kill its contractor? The room went silent, waiting for an answer. Someone laughed it off, calling the idea nonsense. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Then, a chilling thought was voiced: a dragon could betray a human. The mood shifted, and not in a good way. But plot twist, the real betrayal might not be from the dragon. It was more likely to come from the contractor themselves. Mic drop. Zeke stared at the recording, watching as Bahamut's massive form crumbled into ashes, vanishing without a trace. The scene was intense, but something felt off. His mind raced, trying to piece together what he was seeing. The recording held more than just a dragon's demise. Suddenly, his eyes widened as a realization struck him. There was something familiar in the ashes. It was the heart and fang of Bahamut, the very same ones he had acquired at the home of the Dragonslayer. But how? Dragons turning to dust and leaving behind parts of themselves was unheard of. Yet here was Bahamut doing just that. Zeke pondered the pureblood gloves made from dragon leather. Maybe Bahamut was a special case, an exception to the rule. This was getting complicated. Zeke's thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a loud bang, jolting him back to reality. The screen went blank, leaving him in silence. He couldn't help but wonder if that was the end of the video. With a sigh, he muttered to himself, trying to figure out what was going on. Deciding to revisit things later, he stepped back for a moment. After accessing the Valhalla Great Library, he found that Tarakan's secret library was linked to the system, allowing him to view its records anytime, anywhere. He immediately tried to replay Tarakan's diary. But as expected, there was too much noise in that part, so he couldn't hear the final exchange between the two. Of course, it wasn't like he gained nothing from it. Thanks to consistently looking through the records in the secret library, he managed to learn something new. It was the fact that the true dragon swordplay was the origin of the dragon-slaying arts. Tarakan simplified the complex true dragon swordplay and refined it to create the dragon-slaying arts. But because its strength fell as much as it got easier, unlike its name implies, it became a technique that was unable to deal a fatal blow to even a dragonborn. But wait, there was a twist. By tapping into some innate traits, Tarakan managed to turn the technique into something way more practical. Sure, the raw power took a nosedive, but suddenly it could actually land a hit that mattered. What really grinds his gears, though, is how different the legend of the Dragonslayer is from what Tarakan actually wrote in his diary. Like, the legend is out here telling one story, but the diary? Totally different vibes. The legend says Tarakan slayed Bahamut and brought in this golden era of prosperity. Pretty standard hero stuff, right? But even though the big picture matches the diary, the details are way off. For starters, the fact that Tarakan and Bahamut were contracted isn't mentioned anywhere. Like, at all. It wasn't just left out, it was completely erased from history. Cue the dramatic pause. Suddenly, a voice breaks the silence. It's been a while, partner. The voice continues, not sure why he suddenly got into folktales, but he did his homework. He dug up every version of the Dragonslayer legend across the continent, even the ones not translated into the common tongue. It was a given, but after all that research, he hit a wall. There was nothing on contracts between humans and dragons like anywhere. Not even a single book mentioned the dragons that Tarakan or the legendary Kaiser were contracted with. It was a total blank. But then things got weird. After some digging, he kept hearing the same thing over and over, like some kind of conspiracy was going on. And then, boom, a warning message directly from the Great Draker family. Because of that, the syndicate decided to back out of the investigation. They weren't trying to start anything with the Drakers. Silence. But the pieces were starting to come together. He was certain of it now. The Drakers were definitely censoring information about Tarakan. But why? The Drakers were one of the 3 transcendent families, and they made their name thanks to Tarakan, the first Dragonslayer. Yet, that very same Draker family was restricting information about Tarakan and Bahamut. Something wasn't adding up. Regardless of the Draker family's motives, it was clear there was more to the situation than meets the eye. Feeling like they might have missed something, they decided to revisit the secret library, hoping to uncover more clues. As they prepared to dive deeper, the system flickered to life, ready to assist. A moment of silence passed as they gathered their thoughts. The anticipation built, knowing that today was the perfect day to investigate further. With everyone else occupied, the coast was clear for some serious sleuthing. The plan was set, and it was time to put it into action. Double-checking the details, they confirmed that all employees, including Decker, should be off today. Duke and Andre were also expected to be late, tied up with their own business. The timing couldn't be better. With everything in place, it was time to make a move. Activating the system's minimap, they prepared to navigate the hidden corners of the library. The adventure was about to begin, and the secrets of Tarakan and Bahamut were within reach. The journey was just getting started, but already, there were signs of trouble. Someone had confirmed the presence of 2 mysterious figures, one lurking outside and another hidden inside. The adventure was about to get real and not in a fun way. The protagonist couldn't believe it. Had the hunting dogs from the giant mountains tracked him down? That would be just his luck. Running into trouble before the adventure even really began. But then again, it couldn't be them. He hadn't even used his dragon-slaying arts or a lanceword. Even if they were hunting dogs, they probably hadn't connected the dots between him and the events that transpired there. Phew, close one. If it wasn't the hunting dogs, then who was it? The protagonist knew that figuring out their identities wasn't the top priority right now. The most likely culprit behind this had to be someone else, someone with a grudge or a hidden agenda. The plot was thickening, and the protagonist was right in the middle of it. Could it be Abel? The name sent a chill down his spine. An assassin sent by Abel, who had seen through the alliance that Carly and he had formed, would roughly explain what was going on here. The shadowy figure offered a choice, claiming he didn't have to answer if he didn't want to. But the tone made it clear that silence might not be the best option here. A heavy silence hung in the air, the weight of the unspoken threat lingering like an awkward group chat after someone drops a truth bomb. The figure broke the silence, boasting about having plenty of ways to get the truth out of him. Yikes, talk about a red flag. The threat hung in the air, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Or maybe just unfollow and block. He stood there, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This was not how he thought his day would go. The figure loomed, waiting for a response. The silence was deafening, like when your crush leaves you on read. He knew he had to say something, do something. But what? This was one of those moments where you wish you had a script. He stood there, mind racing, trying to piece together what to do next. The silence was deafening, and he knew he had to break it. But how? Then, like a light bulb moment straight out of a cheesy action flick, it hit him. The way his opponent moved, the style, it all clicked. After crossing blades with him, he had a rough idea of who this guy might be. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. Even if you could mask your appearance, it was difficult to hide your style of swordsmanship in the midst of battle. It was like trying to hide your dance moves in the middle of a TikTok challenge, just not gonna happen. This was a style of knife work from the Gorka Kingdom, which was in the northern regions of the continent. It was like recognizing someone's accent, but with knives. The Gorka Kingdom's Rangers. They were known to be the strongest of rangers, the guardians of the northern continent. They wielded a kukri, a dagger with a distinct shape. It was like the Swiss Army knife of daggers, but way cooler. And thanks to their outstanding skill, they were highly valued in the central continent and were used as special forces assigned important missions. They were like the Avengers, but with more daggers and less spandex. Anyway, if it was a Gorkan ranger, then it couldn't be Abel's doing. They didn't take on requests that created grudges, like assassinations. They were professionals, not some petty hitmen. Also, there was something else that didn't add up. For a ranger, he was acting far too giddy. It was like watching a seasoned warrior fanboy over their favorite anime. Something was definitely off. The ranger was acting sus, leaving openings during the fight but not capitalizing on them. It was like he was playing the game on easy mode just to flex his skills. It was clear he had the skills to react and pressure his opponent, but he chose not to. This was giving major, "I'm not here to fight" vibes. So what was his goal? Suddenly, the one outside began to move. The plot was thickening, and it was time to find out what was really going on. The earthy scent in the air was unmistakable. It was the characteristic aroma of mandragora rootlets, a common ingredient in sedatives. Someone was definitely trying to put them to sleep. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes you want to sneeze but also hold your breath forever. Suddenly, a notification popped up like an unwanted ad. Compounds from the mandragora's rootlets had been detected. Great, just what they needed. But then, like a superhero making a grand entrance, another notification appeared. Skill poison resistance had activated. It was like having a built-in antidote, no dramatic fainting required. With the poison resistance in play, the main character was basically immune to the sleepy time vibes of the mandragora. Crisis averted, for now. The main character decided to play it cool, like a spy on a secret mission. He pretended to be out cold, but his mind was racing faster than a caffeine-fueled squirrel. He lay there, motionless, but his senses were on high alert. The room was quiet, too quiet. It was the kind of silence that makes you want to yell just to break the tension. He could feel the presence of someone else in the room, lurking in the shadows. It was like playing a game of hide and seek, but with higher stakes and less fun. The main character kept up the act, waiting for the perfect moment to make his move. It was like being in a bad action movie, but he was determined to see it through. Meanwhile, in the moonlit darkness, a man with an eye patch sat with his hands folded, like a villain from a classic tale. His presence added an extra layer of mystery and danger to the already tense situation. Cut to the serene farmlands on the outskirts of Atlas, where Zeke Draker found himself, taking in the view with a weary sigh. He hadn't expected to end up here, an outsider in chains of all places. Meanwhile, at the edge of a cliff, stood Cliff Lionheart, leader of the Reinhardt merchant group. With a confident smirk, he introduced himself, expecting a smoother conversation now that his identity was known. Zeke recognized him, a familiar face from his past life. The Reinhardt merchant group, one of the 10 great merchant groups, operating with the Alencia Kingdom at its center. Zeke couldn't help but think about the looming continental war that Abel and the Empire were about to ignite. If things continued on this path, it would end up razing not just the Empire, but the Alencia Kingdom to the ground as well. In a flashback, Zeke recalled how both he and Cliff had once fiercely opposed the Empire. But after passing on some critical intel, Cliff had returned to the crumbling Alencia Kingdom, and Zeke had never seen him again. Until now, that is. Zeke couldn't believe that after everything they went through to escape, Cliff had gone back. He wasn't sure if it was some patriotic urge or what, but from his perspective it was a totally foolish move. Cliff apologized for the rough treatment, acknowledging that his methods were inevitably harsh. He assured Zeke that an apology for the discourtesy would come from the merchant group's side as he untied him. Zeke stretched his wrists, cutting Cliff off mid-sentence. He wasn't in the mood for pleasantries and wanted Cliff to get to the point. With an aura emitting from him, Zeke demanded to know what Cliff wanted. Cliff gulped, realizing that even though Zeke was young, a Draker was a Draker, and he wasn't someone to be trifled with. Even the most experienced knights would struggle to remain calm in such a tense situation, but Zeke didn't even break a sweat. Cliff had set the stage to take the initiative in their discussion, but Zeke had effortlessly taken back control. Fine, Cliff thought he would tell Zeke what he wanted. Cliff slid some documents across the table, trying to play it cool. He asked Zeke to take a look like it was no big deal, but you could tell he was holding back something juicy. Zeke opened the documents and Cliff dropped the bomb. It was a record of those infected by the new pandemic that had been spreading like wildfire in the southern regions of the central continent. Zeke was confused, wondering why Cliff would want him to see this. As Zeke flipped through the pages, his expression changed. Something caught his eye, and it was clear this wasn't just any old document. Zeke's eyes widened as he saw a name that hit close to home. Elena Stone. His reaction was immediate and intense. Memories flooded back. Elena Stone, the mother of his first subordinate, Liam Stone. She had suffered from the rose disease, a brutal illness with no survivors. But because of Zeke's instructions, Liam had managed to create a cure, and she had recovered. Zeke slammed the documents down on the table, demanding to know what this was all about. Cliff calmly explained that the disease was now known as the rose disease, a horrific and torturous illness with a 100% fatality rate. Cliff paused, looking at a picture of Elena. He revealed that Elena Stone was the only one who didn't die. In fact, she had recovered completely. Even the physician in charge of her case couldn't explain it. Cliff, still staring coldly at the picture of Elena, suddenly shifted his gaze and asked if Zeke knew anything about the Isekai. Zeke smirked, sensing Cliff's intentions from the start. He wasn't about to let Cliff poke around like this, especially not after hinting at being just a mere merchant. Zeke pondered the situation. Given the fatality rate of the rose disease, it made sense that someone would go to great lengths for a cure. The value of such a cure was beyond imagination, enough to make someone consider robbing the entire continent of its wealth. But if Cliff was who Zeke thought he was, then he was a reasonable man who wouldn't lose himself to greed. He wouldn't risk kidnapping a descendant of one of the transcendent Satos. That meant there was only one possibility. Of course, Zeke knew about the Isekais. Cliff immediately stood up, his eyes wide with realization. Zeke casually mentioned that he was the one who gave Elena the cure to begin with. Cliff, desperate and willing to pay any price, begged Zeke to sell it to him. Zeke stopped Cliff mid-sentence with a smirk, calling out his excitement. He pointed out that Cliff wasn't acting like a typical merchant at all. Cliff paused, realizing Zeke's goal wasn't money. Zeke, with a grin, suggested they make a deal as merchants do. Zeke's smile turned slightly evil as he revealed his intention to save someone's life. Cliff, trying to keep up, asked if Zeke wanted 3 requests fulfilled in exchange for the cure's production method. Zeke confirmed, making it sound simple. Cliff, curious, asked what exactly those requests were. Zeke casually mentioned he didn't know yet and would call in those favors when needed. He assured Cliff not to worry too much, as he'd only ask for something a merchant group couldn't handle. Cliff, trying to keep his composure, replied that if they could come to terms on what exactly can't meant, then they could proceed. Zeke started scribbling notes, probably plotting his next move. Zeke handed over some instructions to Cliff, who looked like he was about to lose it. Cliff was visibly shaken, muttering to himself about how this was it. But Zeke, being the dramatic person he is, suddenly took it all back, saying there was something he was personally curious about. Zeke, with a sly grin, said there was something he was personally curious about. Cliff was trembling as Zeke leaned in, asking who exactly was the person in need of this medicine. Cliff stammered, trying to keep it together, saying he simply intended to procure a product with immense worth as a merchant. Zeke wasn't having it, pointing out that Cliff had not only gotten the Northern Rangers to kidnap someone from a transcendent family but also lost his cool completely. He reminded Cliff that this wasn't how the great Reinhardt merchant group should be presenting itself. Cliff, now sweating bullets, admitted it was a member of the royal family of the Kingdom of Valencia. Zeke, clearly enjoying this, asked who among them it was. Cliff was at a loss for words, and Zeke couldn't believe it. How many people were even in the royal family of Valencia? It seemed like a plot twist straight out of a drama series. Zeke flashed back to a previous conversation. He had warned someone about returning to the Kingdom of Valencia, saying both the kingdom and the Reinhardt merchant group were doomed. He had even advised seeking asylum in the north, as returning would mean certain death. A tired Cliff had responded, thanking him for the suggestion but insisting he wanted to face his end in Valencia. Zeke had apologized, understanding the weight of Cliff's decision. Back in the present, Cliff reiterated that he couldn't say anything more. His resolve was clear, but there was a new depth in his eyes. Zeke noticed the change in Cliff's demeanor. The look in his eyes was completely different from before. It was as if someone precious to him was involved. Regardless, the Valencia kingdom was standing against the Empire at that very moment. And here was Cliff, siding with the Rome Empire against Alencia in their dispute. The irony was not lost on Zeke. The map laid out the messy state of affairs. Alencia Kingdom was a hot mess with racial tensions and weak royalty causing chaos. Meanwhile, the Rome Empire was just chilling, watching the drama unfold. Zeke knew the Continental War was coming, but he had time. Making friends with the Alentian royalty now would be a power move for the future. But for now, he played it cool, not pushing for answers. With a nod, Zeke handed over the contract to Cliff. The deal was sealed, and both sides were ready to roll. Cliff gripped the note tightly, feeling the weight of the agreement in his hands. Zeke snapped Cliff back to reality, apologizing but not really apologizing for cutting through the emotional moment. He had a request and he wasn't about to wait. Cliff stammered a bit but agreed. Whatever Zeke needed, as long as his merchant group could handle it, he was down. Zeke raised his fist, ready to drop his first request. The vibe was intense, and everyone was all ears. Cliff questioned if Zeke wanted to be hired, wondering if he was planning to start a business. Zeke clarified that he needed a fake identity for temporary use. Cliff pointed out that if that was all Zeke needed, there wasn't any need to ask them for it. Zeke explained that he planned to use it in the southern continent, a crime-ridden territory where he couldn't afford to take any half-hearted measures. Zeke mentioned that the Reinhardt merchant group had built enough trust to even occasionally make use of the cartels. Cliff agreed, although it wasn't particularly pleasing. Cliff understood what Zeke was saying and offered his cousin's name for Zeke to use, ensuring that he wouldn't be outwardly suspected so easily. Zeke, thinking about the money, asked for regular transportation to and from the south, specifying that he would be storing cargo in it, so it needed to be on the larger end. Zeke stated that this was the end of his first request and reminded Cliff that since they had kidnapped and brought him there, they should have prepared a way back for him as well. Cliff, angrily smiling, muttered that Zeke didn't have a conscience. Cliff agreed to Zeke's requests and told him to contact him once the preparations were complete. He mentioned that the Rangers would provide a horse for Zeke to return on. Zeke couldn't believe that the Reinhardt would respond so meekly to this deal. Zeke thought to himself that it seemed like that person was really important to Cliff. Cliff left the scene. Zeke turned around and addressed someone nearby. Zeke turned around and addressed someone nearby. Two men gestured for him to follow them, their expressions serious and urgent. A horse nearby let out a loud neigh, drawing everyone's attention. Zeke walked over to the horse, clearly impressed by its appearance. He couldn't help but admire the horse's strength and beauty. With a swift motion, Zeke mounted the horse, ready to make good use of it. The two men began to walk away, indicating that their business was concluded and it was time for them to leave. Zeke called out to them, asking if this meant their contract with Reinhardt was over. The men seemed surprised, one of them commenting that he didn't think Zeke would know Gorkalai, and questioning if the Drakers even learned such things. Zeke smirked, suggesting they say it was his hobby. He then shifted the conversation to money, expressing his interest in hiring them for something this time. Zeke casually dropped a bombshell, asking if they were up for rescuing someone imprisoned by the infamous McCain. Just another Tuesday. The men exchanged glances, one of them nodding slowly. It was clear they were considering the offer, even if it sounded like a plot straight out of an action movie. Zeke raised an eyebrow, wondering if the reward was the issue. But the men quickly shook their heads, explaining they could make more profit under the same conditions as with the Reinhardt merchant group. Turns out, the real problem was Zeke's identity. Their king had a strict no-deal policy with the Transcendent Satosno. Drama much? Zeke looked baffled, asking if that was really what they were so worried about. Like, seriously? Zeke then dropped another bombshell, mentioning he had a fake identity prepared by Reinhardt. The commission request could be sent under that name, and they'd be good to go as long as he didn't get caught. Smooth. But before they could wrap up, Zeke reminded them there was still something else they needed to settle. Because, of course, there was. The men leaned in, ready to hear what else Zeke had in store. Because why not add more to the already overflowing plate of chaos? Zeke leaned back, smirking like he had just unlocked the ultimate cheat code in a game. The men around him were practically on the edge of their seats, waiting for whatever wild plan he was about to drop next. Because why not add more to the already overflowing plate of chaos? He started off with a dramatic pause because of course he did. The Kukrius were not just any old weapons, he explained. They were basically the soulmates of the Rangers of the Gorka Kingdom. These blades carried as much weight as the Rangers' lives themselves. Losing one was like losing a part of their soul. Pretty heavy stuff, literally and metaphorically. The men exchanged glances, probably wondering if Zeke was about to suggest they go on a soulmate weapon hunt, because that sounded like a quest and a half. Zeke continued, explaining that since the Kukrius were so deeply connected to the Rangers, their lives were basically an all-you-can-lose buffet for anyone who managed to take the weapons. He then casually thanked someone for kidnapping him because apparently that was a thing that happened. He then complimented a monster on its language skills because sure, why not? This guy had been kidnapped, and he was out here making friends with monsters. Priorities, right? The men were probably starting to think that Zeke had a very unique way of making friends and influencing people. Or monsters, in this case. Zeke wrapped up his little speech by saying he wanted to meet up with them again after chatting with someone named Reinhardt. He had started searching for comrades, which sounded a lot like he was trying to assemble a superhero team. His targets were the heroes who had made a name for themselves during the Continental War in his past life, earning the title of the 5 Divine Knights. If he could get chummy with them now and win them over later, they would be some serious assets. Basically, he was playing the long game, making friends with the cool kids so he could sit at their lunch table later. With Dean Flaubert's solid backing, he managed to confirm the rumors. All of his targets were indeed graduates of Valhalla, which was a great start. But timing was a bit of an issue. The Silent Knight, Bishop Kastek, had already graduated and joined the Knight Order of the Thebia Kingdom. The Haze Knight, Jeffrick Salma, was in his graduating year and busy with on-site training. Asta Elidopple was on leave, skipping out due to some serious insomnia. Reyna was likely to enroll next year, and as a blood relative, he'd have plenty of chances to connect with her then. In the end, that left only one person on his list. Diego was the only one left to approach. He remembered heading to Diego's club room to win him over. But as soon as he walked in, he was greeted with an enthusiastic welcome. They were in desperate need of a drummer, and he was volunteered before he could even explain why he was there. Looks like he was about to jam whether he liked it or not. The club members greeted him with a huge banner, welcoming him to the Southern Fusion New Age Music Research Club. They were all about having fun and making music, and he was about to dive headfirst into this new experience. Before he knew it, he was caught up in the rhythm, totally vibing with Diego's pace. After the jam session, he was welcomed back like a returning champ. He declared he was going to train immediately and ordered not to be disturbed. He dove into some intense training, trying to concentrate the flow of aura to pierce through his blood, leading from microcosmic orbit to macrocosmic orbit. But honestly, he had no clue what any of that meant. Those terms were totally new to him. Still, after seeing it for himself, he could understand why Terrakin reformed the dragon-slaying arts. The true dragon swordplay was on a whole other level, demanding insane amounts of aura control that made the dragon-slaying arts look like child's play. This technique wasn't designed for human opponents but was solely crafted to take down dragons, making it nearly as deadly as an elemental sword. The weight of this revelation hung in the air, the sheer power of the technique almost palpable. Familiarity with the dragon-slaying arts helped exaggerate the shape of the sword in his mind, making the technique somewhat more approachable. The silence that followed was heavy, the implications of such a powerful technique sinking in. The air seemed to hum with the potential of this newfound knowledge, the path ahead both exhilarating and daunting. With the true dragon swordplay now a tangible goal, the journey to master it began, promising challenges and growth beyond imagination. The journey kicked off with a laugh, marveling at the sheer power of this newfound divine body. It was like upgrading from a flip phone to the latest smartphone suddenly. Everything felt possible. With the divine body came a system update, boosting combat skills and ether transfer rates to max level. No more buffering, just pure, high-speed action. Then, like a GPS unlocking the fastest route, a mental map unfolded, revealing the ultimate form of the technique. The path to mastery was suddenly crystal clear. And just like that, the pieces started clicking into place. The power wasn't just there, it was becoming a part of him, like muscle memory but for epic combat skills. A moment of pause, the weight of the transformation sinking in. This was more than just an upgrade, it was a full-on glow-up. But wait, what was this new sensation? Something unexpected flickered at the edge of perception, like a notification popping up out of nowhere. Just recently, he had flexed his way past the ultimate boss level, the Red Knight, stepping into a whole new realm of the game. Talk about leveling up. But as they say, the higher you level up, the tougher the next boss becomes. The heart of Bahamut in the Ether Hall was resonating with the true dragon's swordplay, crying out before he could even process what was happening. Time to brace himself before he lost all sense of reality. Little did he know, Bahamut's heart had reacted to Sheltern Draker's true dragon swordplay. The memories engraved within Bahamut's heart were being replayed. Bahamut's memories? This was about to get interesting. As the memories continued to unfold, the scene shifted, plunging into an abyss of darkness. The darkness was so intense that it was impossible to make out anything. It was like trying to see in a room with no lights, absolutely pitch black. Suddenly, a faint glimmer of light appeared, growing brighter and brighter. Someone was coming. A hooded figure emerged from the shadows, his presence as mysterious as the darkness itself. He addressed Bahamut with a sense of urgency, stating that he had a request to make. Bahamut stood there, his expression unreadable, waiting for the hooded man to continue. The silence between them was palpable, the weight of the request hanging in the air. The hooded man held out a book, its cover worn and ancient. He explained that he had created a true dragon swordplay and needed Bahamut to safeguard it. Bahamut, the dragon, couldn't believe his eyes. He had always known Sheltern was a pete, but he never expected him to be mad. Meanwhile, Zeke Draker watched the scene unfold from a vision, realizing the identity of the hooded man. Bahamut, however, was not convinced, and trusting a dragon with a dragon-killing technique seemed like a bad joke. Sheltern confirmed Bahamut's suspicions with a simple affirmation. He went on to explain that Kronos had also agreed to this plan. Bahamut would be the better choice for a reason he didn't quite finish. Bahamut took a loud, deliberate step, the sound echoing through the room like a thunderclap. Swords materialized around the dragon as he declared that Kronos had been led astray by humans and had lost his sense as a mediator. Sheltern rested his hand on his sword, the tension in the room escalating like a reality TV show about to drop its season finale. Sheltern barely had time to process the sudden plot twist as a forest of spears materialized. All pointed directly at him like he was the main character in a suspense thriller no one told him he auditioned for. Bahamut, clearly not here for the drama, dropped the mic with a declaration that he wasn't buying whatever Sheltern was selling. And just like that, Bahamut went full beast mode, roaring out his disapproval like a mythical creature who just found out his favorite prophecy got cancelled. Rabid, rambling prophecies? More like a bad Yelp review for Sheltern's entire existence. The dust settled, but the tension? Oh, it was still hanging in the air like an awkward group chat after someone drops a spoiler. Silence. The kind that makes you check if your headphones are still working. Everyone was waiting for the next move, like when your Wi-Fi buffer icon decides to take a coffee break. The energy shifted. It was one of those moments where you could almost hear a pin drop, but instead, it was just the weight of the unknown pressing down on everyone. No one dared to move. It was like a game of musical chairs, but the music had stopped, and no one was sure if they should sit or bolt for the door. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Or, just awkwardly stare at it like it's your ex's new relationship status. And then nothing. Just the lingering sense that something big was about to go down. Like when your favorite show ends on a cliffhanger and you're left screaming at the screen. The scene kicked off with a dramatic reveal of the pinnacle of all creation, draconic magic. And let's just say it was not your average party trick. The sheer force of it left everyone in awe, like when you see someone parallel park perfectly on the first try. Even the most powerful beings would struggle to knock down a couple of these magical towers, but taking them all head-on? That's where Sheltern came in, the guy who apparently eats magical chaos for breakfast. Sheltern wasn't just any man, he was a monster all on his own. Like that one friend who can down an entire pizza by themselves and still ask for dessert. The kind of guy who looks at an army of magical towers and says, "Yeah, I can take him." Suddenly, a voice boomed out, telling Sheltern to get the heck out of their lair. And not just a polite "please leave," but a full-on "get out or I'll blow up your kingdom" kind of threat. Drama level 100. But then, a calm and collected voice chimed in, asking if that was really okay. Because, actions have consequences and all that jazz. Karma was about to come knocking, and not in a good way. The response? A laugh and a dismissal of the karmic sanctions like they were a bad Yelp review. What a joke, was the verdict, because apparently, this guy wasn't afraid of a little cosmic payback. The tension ramped up as the mysterious voice wondered what a human like Sheltern knew about anything. But Sheltern wasn't having it. He declared that no matter how many of his enemies he crushed, those karmic sanctions wouldn't ever apply to him. Spoiler alert, that's not usually how karma works, buddy. And in the end, it all played out just like Kronos predicted. Because of course it did. Why break the trend of dramatic irony now? And then silence. The kind of silence that makes you lean in and go, "Wait, what happens next?" And then silence. The kind of silence that makes you lean in and go, "Wait, What happens next? Suddenly, a loud exclamation broke the quiet, like when someone realizes they've just stepped on a Lego. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife, or maybe just a really sharp glance. A voice echoed, filled with a mix of anger and defiance, questioning if wielding Kronos' power made someone invincible. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. The air was still, charged with an almost electric tension, like waiting for your Wi-Fi to reconnect during a crucial moment in a game. Another gasp, this time laced with shock and disbelief, as if someone had just seen their favorite character get cancelled. The silence returned, but it was different now, heavier, like when you realize you've been binge-watching a series for way too long. Then, the unthinkable happened. Bahamut's attack was halted, leaving everyone in a state of stunned silence, like when your phone battery hits 1% but somehow keeps going. It was Sheltern's magic, restraining Bahamut, like a superhero holding back a villain in a climactic showdown. The tension was real, and the stakes were higher than ever. The room fell silent, the air thick with tension as everyone processed the sheer magnitude of the magic unfolding before them. The crowd was absolutely losing it, their minds blown by the insane amount of magical power on display. It was like watching a superhero flex their muscles for the first time, and everyone was here for it. But Bahamut wasn't having it. He scoffed at the idea that anyone could challenge him just because they had Kronos power. The sass was strong with this one. Then it hit them considering Bahamut's earlier reaction. That clock had to be an artifact packed with Kronos power. The plot was thickening, and everyone was leaning in. Suddenly, the tension spiked. Did Bahamut just break the spell? The crowd collectively gasped, waiting for the next big reveal. The crowd erupted as the name Shelton Draker echoed through the air. Was that vision just a glimpse into something much bigger? The tension was real. It was Kronos' prophecy, and the stakes were higher than ever. The question hung heavy: why was the true dragon's swordplay being entrusted now? The mood shifted. The idea of dragons making deals with humans was called out as wrong from the start. Humans should stand on their own, no dragon crutches needed. Then came the demand handed over. The technique to take down dragons, the true dragon's swordplay, was up for grabs. Silence fell, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. What would happen next? The pause stretched on, the air thick with anticipation. The crowd leaned in, waiting for the next move. A voice broke the silence, acknowledging the job well done. It was all to protect the world, or so they claimed. But not everyone was buying it. The accusation flew: protect mankind, not the world. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The voice declared they would handle things themselves, prophecy or no prophecy. It didn't matter either way, they had a plan. But humans were bound to learn about Aura eventually, and that was a problem. If that happened, they'd personally wipe out humanity. No way were they letting humans mess with powers beyond their control. They admitted their fear of dragons led them to create the true dragon's swordplay. But hey, at least they trusted someone. Kronos always believed they'd find someone to open their heart to. And now it seemed like they had. They'd find a contractor, someone to share the journey with. The future wasn't looking so bleak anymore. But as they say, life's got a funny way of throwing curveballs. The idea of a smooth journey ahead? Yeah, that wasn't happening. Not a single word of their conversation made sense, and it was all going over their head like a bad Wi-Fi signal. But one thing was crystal clear. Bahamut was not about to trust humans anytime soon. After getting a glimpse into Bahamut's heart, they could totally see where he was coming from. Still, something didn't add up. Why would Bahamut contract with Tarakan? It was a plot twist they didn't see coming, and honestly, it made zero sense. Cue the dramatic pause. Diving into Bahamut's memories was like scrolling through an endless feed of curiosity. They just had to know more. Turns out, history had been majorly manipulated by the Drakers. And in this era, Bahamut, Tarakan's contracted dragon, was labeled as straight-up evil. Finding any useful documents on this? Yeah, that was a big no-go. Like trying to find a decent meme on an ancient forum, just not happening. Zeke Draker was out here grinding, leveling up his sword skills and hunting for clues like a detective on a caffeine binge. Then, like an unexpected plot twist, a letter from Reinhardt slid into his life, announcing that his first request was all set. He had asked for an identity that would keep him under the radar, but this was next-level stealth mode. Turns out, he was now the deputy manager of the Reinhardt Merchant Group's southern branch. Like, who even saw that coming? The plot thickens, and so does his resume. Zeke took a moment, letting the weight of his new title sink in. Something caught his eye, pulling him from his thoughts. A carrier pigeon swooped in with a message, and Zeke couldn't help but smirk. Finally, some progress. And it seemed like Kay had found her resolve too. The squad was getting back on track. As a lady guided the protagonist, she welcomed him, explaining that this was the Draker Treasury, home to 17,000 rare artifacts. He could exchange his tokens for any of them, she added, inviting him to follow her. While walking, she mentioned that once he left, he wouldn't be able to re-enter, so he should plan his time wisely. She also pointed out the lack of guards, which seemed odd for a place storing such valuable items. The lady clarified that guards were unnecessary here. The security magic cast here was as strong as the one protecting the patriarch. Plus, all the relics were tracked with magic, making it impossible to steal any of them. Talk about high-tech security, am I right? The protagonist thought to himself that appearances could be deceiving. The lady then instructed him to place the token he had received into a designated spot. As he did so, a loud noise echoed, signaling the start of something big. As the loud noise faded, a large door creaked open, revealing what lay beyond. Behind the door was a massive space filled with tools and equipment scattered around, looking like a tech enthusiast's dream garage. Zeke Draker stepped in, his eyes widening as he took in the sight. The inside was way bigger than it seemed from the outside, very much like the Draker style. With a smirk, he muttered about how typical this was of his family. A lady nearby, seemingly unimpressed, decided it was time to take her leave. Zeke pondered how it would take ages just to identify each relic's function. He wondered if there was a way to organize the relics according to his desired criteria. Suddenly, a voice confirmed the administrator's request, linking the relevant functionality to something called Dragon Eyes. The voice instructed to please select a target item using Dragon Eyes. Zeke, a bit confused, repeated the instruction to himself, trying to make sense of it. A sigh of realization escaped him as he finally got it, ready to proceed with the task at hand. He finally got it and was ready to warm up. With the draconian skill, Dragon Eyes, he could now see detailed information about anything he observed carefully. It was like having a built-in scanner, but way cooler. He took a moment to process the new skill, feeling the power at his fingertips. He pondered if this should be enough for what he had in mind. He hoped this would be sufficient for his plan. The selected items would appear on his minimap, making it easier to track them. He selected a bunch of items, 138 in total, and they popped up on his minimap. He took a breath, preparing for what was next. There were way more items than he expected. He decided to exclude any non-artifacts, like normal and consumable items. After sorting, he was left with 9,832 items. Talk about a serious inventory management situation. Even after narrowing it down, there were still way too many items. He decided to up his game and exclude all swords that couldn't match up to the Stygian blade. Turns out, every single sword got the boot. That could only mean one thing: the Stygian blade was the ultimate flex, even when stacked against a mountain of artifacts. But then, something unexpected popped up, leaving him totally confused. Out of nowhere, information started displaying itself. What in the world was going on? He figured whatever it was should be around there somewhere. Suddenly, a notification dropped he had arrived at the specified coordinates. Silence. Nothing happened. A weird noise rang out, and then, a bracelet appeared out of nowhere. Like, seriously, a bracelet? Even though its details weren't showing up, it looked completely normal. No glitches, no errors, just a plain old bracelet. He stood there, staring at it, totally lost for words. What was this thing and why was it acting so mysterious? He stood there, totally clueless about what was going on. The item in his hand seemed to hum with an energy of its own, like it was waiting for something. Suddenly, words flashed before him, saying the item had reacted to the title heir to Terrakin Draker. Okay, that was not what he was expecting at all. The fact that it responded to the heir title must mean it was once Terrakin's. Plot twist: this thing was basically a hand-me-down from some ancient, probably super powerful dude. He blinked, processing the info dump. This was getting weirder by the second. More text popped up, explaining that this was a sacred guardian stone. A bracelet with a guardian stone embedded in it that could call forth a summon. Apparently, it bore the fairy monarch's blessing, whatever that meant. Fancy. Before he could even wrap his head around it, another message appeared, saying the sacred guardian stone had entered his possession. Like, congrats or whatever, but he didn't even ask for this. Then it hit him with the big one: could now call forth a summon suitable to his soul using the stone. Okay, that sounded equal parts cool and terrifying. He mentally freaked out. His possession. Says who? And could he even remove it from his possession if he wanted to? But before he could spiral further, the system chimed in again, confirming the administrator's request. Like, whose administrator? His? The stones? The universes? So many questions. He groaned internally. He hadn't even seen everything yet, and already all his plans were going off the rails. Classic. But hey, maybe he should think positively. If this was Tarakan's legacy, then it had to be better than most artifacts, right? With a deep breath, he told the system to activate the bracelet's properties. Time to see what this thing could really do. The system confirmed his request, and the sacred guardian stone lit up, searching for a summons suitable for his soul. No turning back now. The system hummed to life, its gears turning in the digital ether, ready to find the perfect match for his soul. And just like that, the system announced it had found a holy beast that vibed with his soul. No catfish here, folks. The summoning sequence initiated, the air crackling with anticipation as the holy beast prepared to make its grand entrance. The moment hung heavy, the world seemingly holding its breath as the summoning circle glowed brighter. Then, in a flash of light, it arrived, the holy beast materializing before his very eyes. The dust settled, revealing the silhouette of the summoned creature, its form slowly coming into focus. The system confirmed it, a holy beast draconic steed stood before him. But was this really a holy beast? It looked more like a mythical creature straight out of a fantasy epic. Its presence was overwhelming, leaving him in awe and slightly questioning the system's taste. The system dropped another bombshell. Bahamut's heart and Fong were already insane pulls, but now an artifact that could summon a holy beast? Someone had been hitting the legendary loot table pretty hard. Seriously, just how many overpowered things did Tarakan have stashed away? This was getting ridiculous. The realization hit like a sudden plot twist, leaving him momentarily speechless. So, being suitable for his soul meant having access to all these crazy powerful items. No wonder the system was so excited. The holy beast seemed to approve, its presence radiating a sense of mutual liking. Wait, what? The holy beast actually liked him back? That was unexpected. The system explained that by granting the holy beast a name, he would be able to summon it anytime using the guardian stone. That was convenient. A name? Huh? What about Bucephalus? That sounded pretty epic. The system seemed pleased with his choice, glad that he liked the name. Despite the grand title of King of the Draconic Steeds, he had never actually seen one before, leaving him clueless about what this new role truly meant. He stood there, processing the weight of his new title, when suddenly, something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a majestic creature appeared before him. He couldn't believe his eyes and exclaimed, calling out the name Bucephalus in sheer amazement. The creature seemed just as surprised, responding with a mix of confusion and curiosity. After a moment of mutual surprise, the creature offered him a ride, confirming its status as a holy beast. He was in awe. This was really happening. Sensing his desire to test its abilities, the creature allowed him to mount its back, ready to showcase its true power. With a surge of excitement, he urged Bucephalus to run like the wind, eager to experience the thrill of riding a draconic steed. And with that, they were off, the wind rushing past them as they embarked on an incredible journey together. As they continued their journey, the world around them blurred with speed. Zeke couldn't help but notice the eerie silence despite their breakneck pace. The lack of hoofbeats was unsettling, making him wonder if he had stumbled upon something truly extraordinary. The journey continued, the mystery of their steed deepening with each passing moment. Suddenly, magic circles appeared around them, and a voice echoed with laughter, praising Bucephalus as the best. Zeke couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and confusion. The scene shifted to a horse carriage, adding to the enigmatic atmosphere surrounding their journey. In a flashback, a lady hesitated, her voice trembling as she questioned whether he would really go through with his decision. Zeke recalled the guide's reluctant response when he mentioned he would choose the bracelet. The memory lingered, adding a layer of complexity to his current adventure. Zeke flashed back to the guide's warning about the treasure room being filled with both priceless treasures and plenty of junk. He wondered if the bracelet he chose was just another piece of trash. But something about it felt different. The system hadn't shown any information about the bracelet until it responded to his title. Maybe they hadn't realized its true value, and he had stumbled upon something incredible. Zeke thought he would only discover Tarakan's legacy through dungeons the system led him to. But here he was, getting lucky and finding it in the most unexpected way. Regardless, Zeke felt great about his find. He decided to head back and relax, needing to unwind from that exhausting party. As he left, a voice congratulated him on becoming a proper Knight of Draker, addressing him as Sir Zeke. Zeke found the sudden formality creepy and wondered what was up with that. Cliff Reinhardt revealed himself, explaining that as a formal Knight of Draker, it was only natural for him to speak more reservedly in Zeke's presence. Cliff abruptly ended the conversation, clearly not vibing with the sudden appearance. He cautioned that unexpected visits could seriously mess with his future plans if anyone found out about their connection. Sitting across, Cliff apologized but dropped a bombshell. Someone had been super eager to meet, and well, here they were. The hood came down, revealing the mystery guest. The owner of the Reinhardt Merchant Group greeted Zeke Draker once more, introducing herself formally. Melissa, the first princess of the Alencia Kingdom, stood before him, her identity now clear. Zeke couldn't help but let out a dramatic sigh, realizing that the first princess of the Alencia Kingdom, Melissa Alencia, was also the true head of the Reinhardt Merchant Group. Talk about a plot twist. Melissa just smirked, totally unfazed. She had that, yeah, I know you know vibe down to a T. Zeke recalled how Princess Melissa had suddenly shown up at his promotion party, right after she'd supposedly been MIA from all her royal duties. Suspicious, much? And get this, her sudden appearance coincided perfectly with the timing of the Rose disease patient being cured. What are the odds? Zeke wasn't buying the coincidence story. Like, not even a little bit. Melissa, ever the efficient royal, suggested they skip the small talk and get straight to business. She revealed that she had urgently requested to meet with Zeke because she needed his assistance. Drama and intrigue. Anyone? Zeke, ever the curious one, asked what kind of assistance she was referring to. Melissa, being the smooth operator she was, asked him to take a look at some documents first. The documents revealed that the Rose disease had been spotted on the borders of the Alencia Kingdom. Melissa explained that these were the results of the Rose disease analysis from the Nirvana Transcendent family. Zeke began sifting through the documents, his eyes scanning the pages with intense focus. Suddenly, something caught his eye. His expression shifted as he stumbled upon a particularly intriguing piece of information. Zeke's eyes widened in disbelief. He couldn't help but question the shocking revelation before him. The Rose disease, a mere mention of it sent shivers down his spine. The documents suggested that the Rose disease was not a natural occurrence but a pathogen created with magic. Zeke's mind raced, trying to comprehend the implications. Melissa chimed in, confirming that the analysis was indeed conducted by the Nirvana family, renowned for their proficiency in magic. If they said it was true, then it was. Zeke couldn't believe that the Rose disease was man-made. The speed at which it was spreading was even faster than in his previous life. The weight of this revelation hit him hard. He wondered if the regression had changed something fundamental. But as he delved deeper, he realized that there was more to uncover. As he continued his investigation, the pieces started to come together. The Rose disease was first spotted in a village on the border of the Alencia Kingdom and the Rome Empire. But here's where things got interesting. The disease wasn't spreading towards the Rome Empire. Plot twist. Anyone? He paused, letting that sink in. It was like finding out your favorite series had a spin-off you never knew about. The realization hit him like a sudden plot twist in a late-night binge session. This was bigger than he thought. The disease was only heading towards the Alencia Kingdom. It was like the disease had a GPS and it was set to Alencia Kingdom only. Wait, that means... His mind raced with the implications. This wasn't just a disease, it was a targeted attack. Yes, they were on the same page, Sir Zeke. The Rome Empire had created the Rose disease and was spreading it to Alencia on purpose. Talk about a villain reveal. The pieces were falling into place, and it all started to make sense. Before the regression, the Alencia Kingdom had fallen so easily to the Rome Empire because of the Rose disease. Classic villain move, right? Now, it was clear why she needed his help. So, what she wanted from him was the rights to mass-produce and distribute the treatment for the Rose disease. Yes, that was correct. The merchant group had only acquired the rights to produce it in the previous contract. For the kingdom to distribute the treatment, an additional contract was needed. There was also a very interesting condition written in the contract. But even so, he had no plans to annul it. Of course, neither would she if she were in his position. As a businesswoman, she knew that the ones who reveal their motives are the ones with the shorter straw. However, since she was able to create an opportunity to strike a deal with him, she couldn't leave without reaping anything. Classic power move Sir Zeke. She had to admit Sir Zeke had played his cards well. But she wasn't about to be outmaneuvered that easily. The Reinhardt merchant group wasn't just some lucky underdog. They had strategy, influence, and clearly, a boss who knew how to make power moves. He laid out his plan, smooth as ever. Distribute supplies to the citizens, handle all the logistics, and of course make sure she was properly compensated. Classic negotiation tactic. But she wasn't biting just yet. 20% of the merchant group's shares? That was a big ask. She had to consider this carefully. The Reinhardt merchant group was already a major player, and with the right moves they could climb even higher. But the Continental Wars were a wild card. One wrong step and they could fall just as fast as they rose. She weighed her options, the stakes high and the pressure on. This wasn't just business, it was a game of thrones and merchants. Silence hung in the air as she considered her next move. The tension was real, and she wasn't about to make a hasty decision. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what came next. This was chess, not checkers, and she was playing for keeps. His offer was tempting, no doubt about it. But she had questions, and she wasn't about to sign on the dotted line without some answers first. She admitted that she might have had ties with the Empire, but the fact that he openly shared this information and offered 0% of his merchant group's shares as compensation was something she couldn't comprehend. He pondered for a moment before deciding to answer her questions in order. He assured her that he knew she had not sided with the Empire. Thanks to the advantage of having the identity of a princess, he had honed his perception by growing his merchant group. He confessed that after their conversation at the banquet, he had observed her from afar. It was very subtle, but her actions toward those affiliated with the Empire were cold. He pointed out that she had declined a handshake with Callus, the fourth imperial prince of the Rome Empire. Though it may have looked like she was showing respect by bowing instead of shaking his hand, to others, it was an instinctive rejection of disgust, and it appeared that she wanted to avoid him. He concluded that was how he knew she wasn't on the Empire's side. She silently acknowledged that he was spot on. As for her second question, he felt there was no need to explain. If it meant being able to save his people, he was willing to do whatever it took. With 0% of his merchant group's shares, he believed it was worth every cent. The scene paused, leaving the weight of the moment hanging in the air. Zeke was desperate, begging Alicia to retreat, insisting that even if they stopped the Empire now, losing her would make it all meaningless. Alicia agreed, acknowledging that a strategic retreat was necessary for future plans. Someone questioned why she would consider such a sacrifice if she was aware of the consequences. Alicia explained that if she could buy her people time to escape with her life, it would be worth it. She concluded that such a sacrifice was worth every cent, echoing the sentiment of the previous scene. The weight of her words left everyone in a contemplative silence. Someone internally struggled, not wanting to think about it but acknowledging that her words mirrored Alicia's sentiment. Despite her internal struggle, she pushed aside her doubts and decided to move forward. With a burst of determination, she agreed to proceed, and the response was immediate and enthusiastic, promising no regrets. She cautioned about keeping her identity under wraps, but was quickly reassured not to worry about it. 2 weeks later, time had passed and the scene was set for what came next. The estate's basement training hall stood ready, the stage for whatever was about to unfold. The anticipation hung in the air, the quiet before the storm of action. Moments ticked by, each one building on the tension of what was to come. The stage was set, the players ready, and the next move was just around the corner. With the stage set and the tension thick enough to cut with a knife, the protagonist's sword began to glow with an aura that screamed business. In a move that was all style and no mercy, he swung his sword, sending smoke billowing everywhere like a dramatic action scene from a blockbuster movie. The smoke swirled and danced, creating a whirlwind that had everyone wondering what just happened. As the smoke cleared, there he stood, looking like he just walked out of a boss fight, ready for whatever came next. Suddenly, the system chimed in with a notification that was music to his ears. Zeke Draker had finally mastered the true dragon's swordplay, and the system was quick to let him know. He couldn't help but wonder if it had taken a month of grinding to get there. The system also dropped the news that he had completed the achievement quest, Sheltern's Heir, and as a bonus, he scored a time reward. Jackpot. 2 random boxes popped up, and he couldn't help but think about making up for the points he used to burn down McCain's storeroom. With a smirk, he muttered, "All right, then," ready to dive into whatever came next. Zeke Draker was on a mission, and the first stop was the Kronos Kingdom's report radar. No time to waste, he was diving right in. But plot twist, the system hit him with an error. The administrator's request was confirmed, but the coordinates were a no-go. Typical tech glitches, right? The system wasn't done though. It dropped another quest bomb: find the seals to activate the coordinates. For seals, 2 in the middle, 1 up north, and 1 down south, all linked and visible on the minimap. Like a treasure hunt, but with more running around. Zeke wasn't thrilled about the distance between each seal. This was going to take a hot minute, but he was ready to grind. Then it clicked. Zeke smirked, realizing why this quest hadn't popped up earlier. The system laid it out, a linked quest for the treasure from the legendary kingdom. Find the scattered seals, restore them, and boom, he'd be the Chronos Kingdom's successor. No time limit, just pure adventure vibes. Zeke glanced at the system bar, his excitement fading faster than a TikTok trend. He scratched his head, totally unimpressed. A title? That was it? No treasure, no epic loot, just a fancy name? And sure, the title might come with some perks, but still. He wondered if the system was counting any treasures he found after restoring the seals as part of the reward. Then he remembered how artifacts could respond to titles. Maybe this title had some special function like a backstage pass to hidden powers. But ugh, the lack of info was frustrating. He let out a low growl, feeling the annoyance bubble up. With a sigh, he tucked the radar away. He'd put this quest on hold for now. There were more pressing matters to deal with. Zeke walked through the door, muttering about having no time. He had just gotten word back from Kay, and that took priority. A sly grin spread across his face. It had been a while since he last got to see those junkies from the south, and he was ready for a reunion. The scene shifted to a bustling shipping dock, where the salty breeze of the sea mingled with the distant cries of seagulls. Welcome to Port Galfa, the southern continent's port town, where the air was thick with the scent of adventure and the faintest hint of chaos. Zeke Draker stepped onto the dock, his nose wrinkling slightly as the sharp scent of blood mixed with the briny smell of the sea. He couldn't help but chuckle to himself. The air in the south really didn't change, did it? As he strolled through the docks, people bowed in respect, their voices filled with admiration. It was an honor to have him there, the vice branch manager of the southern branch of the Reinhard Merchant Group. Zeke waved them off with a casual smirk, telling them to get back to work. The crowd dispersed, their voices echoing promises to await the day they would be graced by his presence once again. Zeke couldn't help but feel a little flustered by the sudden attention. As he walked away, he mused that the similarities between his life before the regression and now weren't just limited to how the sea smelled. He had to keep his mind sharp. The past and present were intertwining in ways he hadn't expected. The docks faded behind him as he ventured further into the town, his thoughts a whirlwind of memories and newfound determination. As he wandered through the town, a voice suddenly called out, stopping him in his tracks. The voice continued, urging him to hurry, leaving him no time to dwell on his thoughts. He quickly composed himself, ready to face whatever came next. A group of northern rangers approached, greeting him warmly and wishing him well on his journey. As they parted ways, a mysterious figure appeared, questioning whether he had memorized the plan. He confirmed that he had, explaining that they would use the chaos of the operation to rescue the girl imprisoned by McCain. The figure warned him to stay vigilant, as the target's protection and escort were part of the plan. He acknowledged the advice but had a burning question of his own. He asked about the incident behind the chaos that would unfold during the operation, expressing his concern about the lack of information. The figure responded cryptically, hinting at an event in the south that would be far more chaotic than any festivity. It would be the day that McCain would disappear after all, leaving him with more questions than answers. As the dust settled from McCain's disappearance, a sudden realization hit like a plot twist no one saw coming. Turns out, the vice branch manager had been lurking in the shadows all along. Classic. Just as the tension peaked, a merchant guide popped in, offering the most awkward timing ever. But hey, at least they were ready to roll with a carriage. With a nervous stutter, the guide led the way, clearly not up for any more surprises that day. Then came the big question: were they actually planning to go to war with McCain? No pressure or anything. Silence hung in the air, heavy with unspoken thoughts and the kind of tension that could cut glass. Someone tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but let's be real, no one was laughing. Because when it comes to McCain, nothing is ever just a joke. The vibe? Dead serious. Because when it comes to McCain, nothing is ever just a joke. The vibe? Dead serious. They double-checked the safe house provided by the merchant group. It looked pretty run down from the outside, but inside, It was surprisingly well maintained, just like one of their fancy hotels. Phew, what a relief. Alright, enough about the safe house. Time to confirm the plan with yet another briefing. Today just happened to be Don Juan's birthday, a day of celebration, but also the day when all the executives would gather for business. And guess who would be there? Kay, the center of the deal, and her supporter, Zeke Murray. Cue the nervous sweating. How many briefings were they going to have? This was already the 5th one. At this point, even someone hooked on Soma would have memorized the plan. Like, come on, how much more prep did they need? One of them was clearly feeling the pressure. Nerves of steel? Not quite. They didn't have that luxury. It was only natural to be nervous, and they weren't about to let their partner off the hook. After dragging them into this mess, the least they could do was sit through another briefing. Something was off about her lately, and now it all made sense. The big question was, what if they found out they were behind the Soma warehouse burnings? McCain wasn't exactly known for his mercy. Rumor had it head paralyzed traders and leave them for dead in a shock dragon swamp. Yikes. No way. After all the cover-ups, were they really about to get caught? She was so panicked that it was almost tempting to tease her a little. Like, chill out, but also, maybe don't? Kate, being a mage would apparently be handled a little differently, so no need to worry. Handled differently? That didn't sound ominous at all. Nope, not one bit. In the South, there was a widespread belief that keeping a mage's corpse could block curses. So, instead of leaving Kay to be dragon-feed, they would chop up his body and sell the parts across the South. Yikes, talk about a grim fate. Kay couldn't help but wonder about the necklaces that McCain members wore. Were they just accessories or something more sinister? The thought of his own fingers being sold sent a chill down his spine. He joked nervously about the potential price tag on his fingers, but the humor fell flat. If that happened, Kay hoped his partner would gather his body parts and bury him somewhere nice. But then, he wondered how his companion even knew such gruesome details. His companion revealed that nobody knew the South better than him, given that he had raised McCain into prosperity and dragged it down into ruin as a hitman. Talk about a resume. This toxic relationship with McCain began after he was chased out of the academy and captured by a slave trader. Not exactly a meet-cute story. It all started when he was sold to a Soma plantation owned by McCain, just when he thought his life couldn't get any worse. McCain's Soma plantations were a place where all he had to do was follow orders and harvest Soma. Eventually, he was dispatched to the battlefield as a human shield, because that's totally a normal job progression. But he managed to be the sole survivor several times over. Maybe he had a hidden talent for dodging death. He didn't question anything at the time, relieved by the fact of his survival. But looking back, it was likely that he activated healing subconsciously, purely as a survival instinct. Turns out, he might have been a natural at self-preservation. After somehow surviving 6 times as a human shield, he caught the eye of Don Juan, who saw potential in him. Turns out, Juan had a knack for spotting talent because our guy was a natural at the whole hitman gig. Purple Knights? Easy. He could just lower their guard and take them out with poison. Classic hitman moves. But Blue Knights? They were a whole different level. Even when he sneaked up on them, they'd spot him every time. And forget about poisoning them. They had this aura thing where they could just burn the poison away. Annoying, right? They would manipulate their internal aura to burn or expel the poison, making them nearly untouchable. But even Blue Knights had their weaknesses. He mastered the art of exploiting the tiniest openings, and soon enough, he was taking down Blue Knights left and right. After racking up a dozen Blue Knight kills, he was basically a legend in the McCain cartel. His reputation was solidified, and he became a key player in the cartel. He went on to achieve great things, even contributing to the downfall of the Pabella cartel. His position grew stronger, and eventually, he became Don Juan's foster child and heir apparent. But just when things seemed to be going perfectly, on the day when all the cartel's top executives were gathered to reveal the successor, something unexpected happened. In a shocking turn of events, he took out everyone in the room, including Don Juan himself. After leaving the McCain cartel behind, he reflected on the past, realizing that 773 million memories were now just history. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts, demanding attention and accusing him of ignoring their questions for quite some time. The accusations flew, questioning his loyalty and suggesting he might be a McCain spy, plotting to use and then betray the syndicate. A brief silence followed, the tension hanging thick in the air. The voice, now uncertain, questioned if their suspicions were true, hoping for a denial. Frustration grew as the voice demanded an immediate response, complaining about the clumsiness of the situation, unlike the smoothness before his regression. Another pause, the tension almost palpable. The scene shifted to Don Juan's mansion, leaving the unresolved confrontation hanging in the air. Meanwhile, the mansion was buzzing with a lively party, the atmosphere thick with chatter and clinking glasses. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the room. Kay stood at the door, announcing herself as an official from their side. Kay. With a respectful bow, Kay greeted Don Juan, expressing her honor at the meeting. Zeke Draker, the protagonist, observed the scene, musing that money indeed made the world go round. He noted that the gathering wasn't just about the McCain hitmen, but also included infamous outlaws and rangers on the run, quite the diverse roster indeed. Behind the mansion's banquet hall, a secret meeting room was set up with people sitting around a table, mob-style. Don Juan, cigar in hand, greeted Kay, expressing his surprise and pleasure at meeting a female mage, noting that a beautiful mage was rarer than a jewel. Don Juan, cigar in hand, leaned in with a smirk, clearly amused by the whole situation. He playfully encouraged Kay to share her wise words, as if she were about to drop some major truth bomb. The title McCain Cartel Boss Don Juan flashed, reminding everyone just who was in charge here. Kay stood there, calm but with that look like she was about to drop a serious truth bomb. She didn't waste any time, bringing up the Soma warehouse fires from several months back. The room got tense real quick, like someone just dropped a major plot twist in a drama. Don Juan's expression darkened as he put out his cigar, his voice sharp. Of course he remembered, how could he forget something like that? Kay hesitated for a second, but then she went for it, asking why he was bringing it up. Don's face turned icy, his tone cold enough to freeze the room. He demanded to know why she was bringing up such a touchy subject. Kay looked a little shaken, stumbling over her words. The pressure was on and she was clearly feeling it. She finally managed to spit it out. There was a traitor in the room, someone who had conspired with Isabella to set those warehouses on fire. Mic drop. The room was left in stunned silence, everyone processing the bombshell she just dropped. The room erupted like a pack of hyenas on energy drinks. Dudes were yelling, demanding she be dragged out immediately. Chaos central. Then, a loud punch into the table. Boom. Silence, please. Everyone quieted down, like someone had hit the mute button. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Don shot her a look that could melt steel. He wanted to know exactly what she just said, and he wasn't messing around. Zeke grabbed a guy, pressing him about accountability. Then he dropped the bomb. Was her beloved brother Joaquin really a traitor? The room was spinning. Zeke wasn't done. He pulled out a knife and turned to El Mencho, calling him out directly. Time to confess, buddy. El Mencho started sweating bullets, wondering how Zeke caught onto something even the boss missed. Plot twist. Much? El Mencho's crew surrounded him, but all they did was stare. El Mencho wasn't having it, yelling at them to earn their paychecks and actually do something. He wasn't done, calling them out as ungrateful wretches who couldn't even pull their weight. Yikes, tough crowd. But the guys backed down, saying there was nothing they could do. Talk about a tough spot. Kay watched the whole scene unfold, just taking it all in. Don stepped in, pointing and giving Zeke the floor, asking who would dare betray McCain. Drama alert. Zeke wasn't messing around. He held a knife to Don Juan's throat, introducing himself with an eerie calm. Talk about making an entrance. He dropped the bombshell, saying he could help Don Juan with his little betrayal problem. Mic drop. Zeke Murray stepped into the scene, introducing himself with a hint of confidence, as if he owned the place. The room was thick with tension, but Zeke was all about that smooth first impression. But instead of a birthday gift, Zeke brought a blade, because apparently that is what you do when you are trying to make friends. The vibe in the room shifted from tense to downright icy. Meanwhile, somewhere in the shadows, someone was sweating bullets, realizing that Zeke was a pro and there was no opening to make their move. Attacking from a distance? Nope, he would just use someone as a shield. Classic spy tactics. And to top it off, they started wondering if Zeke was a spy sent by Pabella. Drama was unfolding. Zeke, being the second in command of McCain, had some serious trust issues to deal with. Despite being accused of being a Pabella spy himself, everyone was side-eyeing him instead. The plot thickened as accusations flew around like confetti at a party. Zeke wasn't having any of it, though. He called out the nonsense, asking if they really thought he would be doing all this without any proof. Mic drop again. Then, out of nowhere, a single name was dropped. K. The room fell silent, and everyone was left wondering what just happened. Silence hung in the air, heavy and full of unanswered questions. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The moments stretched on, everyone holding their breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the silence. A single question mark hung in the air, metaphorically speaking. The confusion was real, and everyone was scrambling to figure out what was going on. The silence continued, broken only by the sound of everyone's thoughts racing a mile a minute. The suspense was killing them. Still nothing. The tension was at an all-time high, and everyone was on the edge of their seats. Finally, someone broke the silence, acknowledging that Zeke had brought something quite interesting to the table. The game was on, and everyone was ready to see what Zeke had up his sleeve. Zeke dropped a bombshell, revealing Joaquin's betrayal with the syndicate and the shocking truth about the Pabella family being pirates. The room was left in stunned silence, the weight of the revelations hanging heavy in the air. The vibe shifted instantly as the pirate story unfolded. I mean, who actually likes pirates? But for Southerners, it was like mentioning their ultimate nemesis. The tension was as thick as a bad Wi-Fi signal. Southerners had every reason to hate pirates. They were practically neighbors with pirate outposts and suffered the most losses. It was like living next to the worst kind of party animals who never cleaned up after themselves. But here's the kicker. Don Juan had a personal vendetta against pirates. They had taken his family from him, and there was no way he could ignore anything involving pirates. This was getting juicy and everyone knew it. The pressure was on, and all eyes turned to Mon. What was his next move going to be? The room was practically buzzing with anticipation. Mon was sweating bullets. This was not the kind of attention he wanted. He was backed into a corner, and there was no easy way out. The questions were piling up. How did Zeke get that photo? And that report, it connected Mon to the Pabella and the Soma warehouse fires from months ago. This was turning into a real mess, and Mon was right in the middle of it. The situation was getting worse by the minute. Suspicions were growing, and Mon felt the weight of it all crashing down. Mon muttered a sarcastic thanks to Zeke Murray for the mess he was in. But honestly, he didn't know much about Syndicate. Did Zeke really think this would be enough to make him suspicious of Joaquin, who was basically like a brother to him? It wasn't enough, not by a long shot. Mon didn't want to resort to drastic measures, but it seemed like he was running out of options. The names El Mencho and Azura echoed in his mind, sending a chill down his spine. If this was all there was, then for the crime of insulting his brother, his boss would have to answer. The tension was building, and Mon knew he had to make a move soon. Zeke Murray had said it himself. He was the traitor who joined hands with the enemy. Mon was processing everything, the betrayal, the lies, it was all too much. He never thought Zeke would betray him like this. There was nothing left to say. The silence spoke volumes. Zeke, with a hint of respect, acknowledged his confession, setting the tone for what was to come. A heavy pause filled the air, the weight of the moment sinking in. The tension was palpable, the aftermath of betrayal lingering like an unshakable fog. The silence stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. Zeke mused on the irony of the situation, noting how fascinating Southerners could be, even in their downfall. Turning to El Mencho, Zeke demanded he admit to his betrayal, the accusation hanging heavy in the air. El Mencho reflected on the absolute nature of oaths, though he never intended to harm anyone's family. It was clear, El Mencho truly was the boss of a large criminal organization, his actions speaking volumes. Don Juan's actions were likely not driven by belief in El Mencho's betrayal, but rather by the lack of any other choice. The culprit behind the Soma warehouse fires from several months ago resurfaced, bringing up memories of McCain's past struggles. It turned out there was a traitor in their midst who had conspired with Pabella to set those warehouses ablaze. This Pabella spy, being the same traitor, had caused chaos within the organization, as confirmed by Kay's testimony. Through decisive actions, Don Juan secured El Mencho and declared him the traitor, aiming to restore order amidst the turmoil. Adding to the drama, it was revealed that the Pabella cartel were pirates, which was a shocking twist no one saw coming. Despite the chaos, Don Juan maintained his composure and calmly attempted to analyze the situation, showing his leadership skills. However, the same couldn't be said for his subordinates, who were struggling to keep it together. Meanwhile, El Mencho himself confessed to being the traitor, adding another layer of complexity to the situation. Even if El Mencho wasn't the traitor, Don Juan realized that leaving him be would cause the organization's discipline to fall apart. He's as calculating as ever, weighing the consequences of each decision carefully. He took a deep breath, preparing for what he had to say next. He began, choosing his words carefully. Since Joaquin was indeed the traitor, as Kay had reported, that meant the syndicate folks were traitors too. It was all part of the plan to move from McCain to Pabella, starting with the burning of the Soma warehouses. The pieces were falling into place, and the truth was finally coming to light. Don gave a cold stare, his gaze piercing through the silence. With a knife resting on the documents, he offered a chilling proposition: confess, and a painless death would be granted. The accusation hit hard, and the response was immediate: this was slander. The accusation of a scheme was met with a furious denial, fingers pointing at Kay as the supposed mastermind. The room tensed as the suggestion of interrogation hung in the air, the drama unfolding like a bad reality show. Suddenly, the accuser found himself splattered across the floor, the tension broken by an unexpected turn of events. Talk about a plot twist. Kay stood there, visibly scared, her trembling figure drawing all eyes. The atmosphere shifted, the focus now on her fearful expression. Kay continued to tremble, her fear palpable as all attention remained fixed on her. Don stepped in, his presence commanding as he questioned the unfolding chaos. What was this all about? The protagonist, Zeke Draker, was quick to respond, his voice cutting through the tension as he pointed towards someone. He had only helped punish a traitor as ordered. Zeke continued, his tone firm as he reminded everyone that Don himself had punished Joaquin, a confessed traitor. The room listened intently, the weight of his words sinking in. He went on, stating that the syndicate who had worked with Joaquin were also traitors. There was more than enough justified cause, wasn't there? The room was silent, considering his words. Don pondered, his gaze thoughtful. He had been wondering what this brat, Zeke, was planning, but perhaps there was more to it than he initially thought. Zeke flashed a grin, his expression shifting to something more playful yet still laced with intent. Don rose to his feet, his tone measured but carrying the weight of someone who had just connected the dots. There was a justified cause here, and Zeke Murray was at the center of it. His gaze sharpened, a killing intent flickering in his eyes as he questioned whether Zeke was some messenger of God, sent to test him, or worse, an agent of the devil here to bring everything crashing down. Zeke, however, wasn't having any of that dramatic speculation. He cut through the tension with a straightforward declaration: wasn't some celestial or infernal being. Nah, he was just a business partner and he had a deal to propose. Don was taken aback, questioning the idea of Zeke being just a business partner. But Zeke confirmed it with a straightforward tone, making it clear that he was indeed just that. Zeke continued, stating that he shared the same view as Don. He was sure that Don would like to exterminate the traitorous syndicate and reestablish order. He pointed out that, with the exile of Ishtar and Pabella's dominance over the ocean routes, the only distribution channel for Soma available to McCain was the syndicate. Given Don's intelligence, Zeke assumed he already knew all this. And so, Don hesitated in punishing the organization that was colluding with a traitor. Don was surprised, thinking that Zeke was speaking like he knew what Don was like. Zeke told him not to fear, as up until now all distribution of Soma in the syndicate had been handled by Kay. From now on, Zeke declared, he and Kay would take charge of McCain Soma on behalf of the syndicate. Don leaned back in his chair, looking all kinds of chill as he dropped the truth bomb. Zeke's offer was tempting, no doubt about it. But Don wasn't about to jump on the bandwagon just yet. If what Zeke was saying was the truth, then maybe, just maybe, they had a deal. Any deal worth its salt had to be built on trust, though. And that was a pretty big ask. Trust wasn't exactly Don's strong suit, especially since this was their first rodeo together. How could he possibly trust Zeke with something this huge? Zeke had to admit Don had a point, but he wasn't about to let that stop him. He had an idea, and it was time to lay it all out on the table. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the conversation hanging heavy in the air. You could cut the tension with a knife as both men sat there, sizing each other up. It was a classic standoff, neither one willing to back down just yet. Then, Zeke dropped the name that would change everything. Paulo Santos. The name echoed through the room, and you could tell it meant business. Zeke was ready to raise the lands under that coward's charge to the ground. Paulo Santos, known as Cowardly Paulo, was the target. Apparently, Paulo was called Cowardly Paulo because he always played it safe, reducing risks at every turn. This made him pretty much a nobody in the organization. But surprisingly, he knew about his nickname and still kept a low profile. Zeke didn't care about any of that, though. As long as Paulo was useful to him, nothing else mattered. That would be enough to win his trust. Respecting the courage shown, Zeke pointed out that it was far too dangerous to attack alone. So, he decided to assign McCain's elite assassination troops to assist. Assist? More like observe, right? And just in case, while proving bravery, there was more to the plan. The tension was building, and the stage was set for a high-stakes showdown. The tension was building, and the stage was set for a high-stakes showdown. Then, out of nowhere, a declaration was made. The responsibility of guarding this mysterious lady fell to someone named McCann. But let's be real, calling it guarding was just a fancy way of saying he was taking her hostage. The room seemed to collectively roll its eyes at the euphemism. With a nod of understanding, the plan was set. The lady would be left in the boss's hands. No questions asked. The deal was sealed with a simple agreement. Cut to the Pabella cartel's turf, specifically Paulo Santos's assigned territory. The scene shifted to the Soma production factory, a place that screamed trouble with a capital T. Silence hung heavy in the air, the calm before the storm. Everyone knew something big was about to go down. And then, a single word echoed, halting everything in its tracks. The tension was palpable, the kind of moment that made hearts race and palms sweat. This was it, the point of no return. Manuel, the assassination squad commander, found himself in a situation he never thought possible. He was waiting for orders, something completely out of character for someone of his rank and experience. But after witnessing his skills firsthand, it was hard not to fall in line. The man was a force to be reckoned with, and even Manuel couldn't deny that. His stamina was on another level, far surpassing what any hitman was capable of. And his movements were quick and precise, as if he had the entire layout of the vast southern lands memorized like the back of his hand. But what really set him apart was his combat skills. He was more skilled than even the beastmen, capable of taking down werewolves, one of the toughest opponents out there. In short, the man was a monster, a true force to be reckoned with. With a simple command, he ordered everyone to wait where they were. No questions asked, no arguments made. He had that kind of presence. But one person couldn't help but speak up, accusing him of never intending to help in the first place. They saw through his act, realizing he was only there to observe. He didn't deny it. Instead, he pointed out that this was the only place where they could see the entire factory at once. He told them not to bother saying something they didn't mean and to just focus on observing him properly. As tensions rose, someone called out for Sir Murray, their voice filled with a mix of fear and desperation. As the call for Sir Murray echoed, the scene shifted to a group of soldiers scrambling in the chaos. One soldier panicked, shouting about what they should do. The commander, keeping a cool head, suggested they just observe from a distance like they were told. Another soldier agreed, adding that there was no need to put themselves in harm's way. The commander then ordered them to set up an outpost. The commander reminded them to focus on camouflaging the outpost so they wouldn't get caught. The soldiers got to work, trying to blend in with their surroundings. Meanwhile, someone noticed Sir Murray already leaping into action, seemingly unfazed by the chaos around him. The scene cut to another group of soldiers, their faces filled with shock and fear. The tension was palpable as they realized the gravity of the situation. Suddenly, a shout rang out, warning that there was a mage among the intruders. The soldiers' faces paled, knowing they were out of their depth. One soldier yelled that this was too much for them, urging someone to call the magic weapons squad for reinforcements. Another soldier agreed, adding that it was only natural for them to react that way when seeing the elemental sword for the first time. The scene was pure chaos, with everyone trying to keep their heads above water. Amidst the chaos, a voice suddenly cut through the noise, declaring that the intruder had been found, as if they had just won a game of hide and seek. Another voice chimed in, casually reminding everyone that this was the same organization that had caused a massive rift between McCain and the South, like it was just some old drama being dug up again. Someone else commented on how quick the response was, almost like they were impressed by the speed of it all. But the show was far from over, and the crowd was already buzzing with anticipation. The energy in the room shifted, and everyone could feel that something even more intense was about to go down. Then, out of nowhere, a voice boomed, claiming that the previous move wasn't even good enough for a warm-up. The crowd lost Ithis was about to get wild. The tension was building, and you could practically hear the collective gasp as everyone waited for what would happen next. Suddenly, someone shouted about cowardly Paulo, calling him a madman like it was some kind of twisted compliment. And as if that wasn't enough, they pointed out that Paulo had even called in a magic tank. The crowd was hyped. This was next-level drama. The crowd wasn't done roasting Paulo yet. Someone shouted about how he must be swimming in all that money, while another pointed out that hiring a mage would have been way cheaper than whatever he was doing. Classic case of spending big just to flex, but the results? Not so impressive. The crowd's laughter and jeers filled the air, their words hanging over Paolo like a bad meme that just wouldn't die. Paolo stood there, probably wondering if all that cash he dropped was worth the public roasting session he was getting. The tension was thick, and Paolo's confidence seemed to be taking a nosedive. This wasn't just a fight, Anna Maria, it was a full-on spectacle. You could almost hear the collective facepalm from the audience as they watched Paolo struggle to keep it together. Zeke Draker, the main character, mused that if you're not a criminal, a cartel wouldn't even bother hiring you. The audience could practically hear the sarcasm dripping from his thoughts. With a swift motion, Zeke unsheathed his Tempest sword and went full wrecking ball on those tanks. Boom, just like that, they were toast. Zeke reflected on how in his past life, he would have hauled tail at the mere sight of magic tanks. But things were different now, and he wasn't about to back down. He stumbled upon an underground door, the kind that screams, "Plot twist ahead." The hall beyond was a grim scene, bodies littered about. Clearly, something sinister had gone down here. Zeke wasn't about to let his guard down. With a quick throw, he took someone out, proving he meant business. Zeke wasn't done yet, striding forward with confidence. He had taken down so many foes already, and he knew it was only a matter of time before his real target showed up. Suddenly, an arrow came flying out of nowhere, aiming straight for him. But Zeke was quick on his feet, catching the arrow midair like it was no big deal. Turns out, the arrow was a duder, so he thought. It exploded in his hand, but Zeke just shrugged it off. With a cool toss, he threw the remnants of the arrow to the ground, barely breaking a sweat. Finally, the moment he'd been waiting for. His eyes locked onto the shadowy figure emerging from the darkness, and he couldn't help but smirk. The game was on. Paolo stepped out from the shadows, gun in hand, looking seriously annoyed. He couldn't believe someone had managed to sneak in and cause this much chaos. Paolo was casually strolling, dropping some serious knowledge about a poison gas called SIOLD3-SODX3. He mentioned it was no joke, strong enough to take down even those with aura abilities. Then, he pulled out an antidote, offering a trade for some intel on Zeke's companion. The label read Pabella Cartel Executive Paulo Santos, so you know this guy means business. Zeke wasn't buying it, thinking this was all just a distraction. He called Paolo out, suspecting he was bluffing with a fake antidote. Like, seriously, did Paolo think he was that gullible? Zeke knew his stuff, pointing out that the black mamba poison Paolo used was notorious for having no antidote. Anyone else would be a goner in minutes, and even a blue knight would suffer some nasty aftereffects. But Zeke? He just smirked. Thanks to his poison resistance, this stuff was basically water to him. In a swift move, Zeke shattered the antidote. Paolo was freaking out, asking if Zeke had lost his mind. Why would he destroy the antidote? Did he have a death wish? But Zeke just calmly reassured him. Poison wasn't going to work on him. Zeke shot Paolo a killer stare, casually mentioning that the only reason it was so quiet above them was because they had taken care of everyone up there. Paolo was shocked, unable to comprehend what Zeke was saying. Outside, the scene was chaotic with fires burning and people down. Paolo couldn't believe it, insisting it was impossible because those people were equipped with magic weapons. Zeke just calmly suggested that if Paolo doubted him, he could go check for himself if he could afford to. Paolo, in disbelief, asked who Zeke was and whose orders he was following. Zeke asked if Paolo didn't have any suspicions, to which Paolo, starting to catch on, asked if it was McCain. Zeke noted that Paolo was catching on quick. Paolo realized that the only one who could do this to Pabella was McCain, but they should have been respecting their territorial boundaries. He asked why Zeke would do this. Zeke questioned if Paolo really didn't have a conscience. Paolo, confused, asked what he meant. Zeke asked if Pabella considered loitering around another's distribution routes or looking for an opportunity to strike to be proper. Pabella had crossed a line, and the boss was not having it. He vowed to crush her and burn her to ashes, declaring that he would eradicate the South of such filthy pirates. The justification was clear, and the boss was not backing down. They had even caught on to the fact that Pabella and her crew were originally pirates. This revelation was a major setback, and the frustration was palpable. The boss, fueled by his rage, chased after Pabella, shouting that she couldn't run from him. The chase was on and the tension was high. After a while, the boss stopped and looked around. He realized that the chase had led him to a completely different place from the underground mines earlier. The surroundings were unfamiliar, and he couldn't help but wonder where he was. On top of that, there were tons of traps on his way there. It was hard holding back just in case there were any prying eyes. The boss had to be careful, and it was a struggle to navigate through the traps. The boss noticed that the traps didn't seem like they were originally part of the ruins. It seemed like someone had installed them recently. This realization made him even more cautious. The boss couldn't help but wonder what Pabella was up to down there. The traps and the unfamiliar surroundings hinted at something bigger, and he was determined to find out what it was. Meanwhile, deep in the shadows, a figure lurked, eyes locked onto the boss with an intensity that could melt steel. The boss had no clue he was being watched, but the observer knew exactly what he was up to. The observer's gaze narrowed as the boss moved cautiously through the traps. It was like watching a puppy trying to solve a Rubik's Cube, entertaining, but you just want to step in and help. Every step the boss took seemed to trigger something new, and the observer couldn't help but smirk. This was getting good. Suddenly, the observer's expression shifted. The boss had stumbled upon something unexpected, and the observer leaned in, curiosity piqued. The boss hesitated, sensing something was off. The observer held their breath, waiting for the moment of realization to hit. The boss finally looked up, eyes scanning the darkness. The observer stayed perfectly still, blending into the shadows like a ninja on a stealth mission. The boss's voice echoed through the chamber, demanding to know who was there. The observer stayed silent, letting the tension build like a season finale cliffhanger. The boss took a step forward, his determination growing. The observer watched, knowing this was about to get interesting. The observer prepared to reveal themselves, a sly smile playing on their lips. The boss was in for a surprise, and they couldn't wait to see his reaction. The observer stepped forward, their smile growing wider as they prepared to make their presence known. The boss stood there, clueless, as the observer relished the anticipation of the surprise they were about to spring. Just as the observer was about to reveal themselves, a sudden commotion echoed from nearby. A figure burst in, looking flustered and annoyed, muttering about running into the same people everywhere they go. The observer's smile faltered for a moment, their grand reveal interrupted by this unexpected entrance. The boss, now alerted, turned to see what the commotion was all about. His curiosity piqued. The newcomer, clearly frustrated, seemed to be having one of those days where you just can't catch a break, running into the same folks no matter where you turn. The observer, now slightly annoyed themselves, had to put their grand plan on hold, thanks to this untimely interruption. The observer was fuming, clearly not a fan of the southern crew. They should have handled their own mess, and now this? Sending in a rat? Really? Well, too late for regrets. Since they showed up, they weren't leaving alive. Drama time. The observer recalled the hunting dog's operation maps, where the giant mountains and southern continent's ruins were marked. Could these ruins really hold one of the artifacts the Emperor was after? Silence fell as the weight of the realization settled in. The dagger looked ordinary, but there was something about the wind wrapping around the blade. It had to be an artifact. Time to face the music. Something was off. A strange energy filled the air. A magic scroll? Seriously? Yep, it was a magic scroll. Someone yelled to brace for impact, but then, plot twist, it was just a soundproofing and barrier spell. No lethal effects, just a chill vibe. No need to panic. The spell was harmless, just setting up a quiet zone. Drama averted, for now. For the next 30 minutes, whatever went down in there would be their little secret. No peeking, no eavesdropping, just pure, unfiltered chaos waiting to happen. No worries about getting caught. No unexpected interruptions, just a golden opportunity to test out some new skills. And you know what that meant? Time to turn this place into his personal playground. How about it, indeed? The stage was set, the rules were clear, and the energy was about to go from 0 to 100 real quick. A subspace pocket? Nah, this was something else entirely. He didn't just pull it out of thin air, bent the rules, making it clear this wasn't your average magic trick. First, there was that weird weapon, then he was throwing around spells like a seasoned mage, and now a sword? What even was this guy's deal? The realization hit like a gut punch. This wasn't just some random show-off, this was next-level stuff. Wait, did that mean he was a blue knight? The stakes just got a whole lot higher. And just like that, he unleashed his signature move, Sky Slice, cutting through everything in his path like a hot knife through butter. No big deal, just your average Tuesday. One poor soul wasn't quick enough to dodge and got slashed down. Oof, tough break. Suddenly, a portal appeared out of nowhere. Plot twist? Maybe. But as quickly as it came, the portal closed shut. Guess no one's going anywhere fun today. Bodies were left burning in the aftermath. Not exactly a pretty sight, but war is war, right? Zeke figured burning the corpses would make it harder to find any traces, pinning the attack on mages and knights alike. He was already planning to stir the pot between McCain and Pabella. Classic Zeke, always thinking 3 steps ahead. But then he paused, scratching his head. Why were Pabella and the Rome Empire even working together? The only thing that made sense was if they were after those ancient artifacts down south. Because, why not add some ancient mystery to the mix? Zeke recalled his past, scratching his head. Before his regression, there had been no traces of the artifacts in this area. But then again, that was 3 years later from now. It was possible they had already found the artifacts and left. Either way, he was just glad he managed to foil the Emperor's plans. Time to head back now. It might have been a coincidence, but Zeke was still happy he managed to mess up the Emperor's plans. Now it was really time to head back. But just as he was about to leave, Zeke heard something. His ears perked up, and he turned around, trying to figure out what was going on. A single footstep echoed in the silence. Someone muttered about an awful situation, and Zeke's curiosity was piqued. A figure with long orange hair clad in red armor appeared. They mentioned sensing a strong, chaotic energy that disappeared in a way akin to magic. Zeke raised an eyebrow, wondering who this new person was. The masked man approached Zeke, stating that an uninvited guest had found his way there. Zeke sighed internally, thinking that his day just got a lot more complicated. Zeke found himself locked in a stare-down with the masked man, whose red armor gleamed with an unsettling intensity. Zeke turned his gaze, his mind racing. That armor looked familiar, like something out of a history book. The intricate designs and the way it seemed to hum with power, it had to be the legendary Herzion armor, the kind only the elite red knights of the Roman Empire were supposed to wear. He recalled the Legends Herzion wasn't just any armor. It was packed with enchantments, from lightning magic to automatic restoration. Basically, it was the ultimate cheat code for knights, making them nearly invincible. But something felt off. The Herzion armor this guy was rocking wasn't quite the same as the one described in the Empire's archives. Zeke couldn't help but call it out. He needed answers. Who was this guy, and why was he wearing armor that looked like Herzion? And more importantly, was he really one of the Red Knights of the Empire? Before he could even finish his thought, the masked man made his move. A swift slash of his sword sent Zeke into high alert. Zeke barely had time to process the attack before his instincts kicked in, blocking the strike with a swift motion. But the force behind the masked man's attack was no joke. Zeke found himself flying through the air, crashing through pillars like a ragdoll. Ouch, that had to hurt. Not one to stay down. Zeke quickly got back up and launched a counterattack, his blade slashing through the air. Just as Zeke thought he had the upper hand, the masked man, let's call him Red, came launching at him from above. Talk about a plot twist. The impact of their clash created a huge explosion, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Things were getting intense. Amidst the chaos, their blades clashed again, the sound of metal against metal echoing through the air. This fight was far from over. Zeke Draker found himself being pushed back, struggling against an almost overwhelming force. He couldn't help but think that this wasn't the strength of a mere human. Was the Herzion also enchanted with some kind of strength-enhancing magic? Suddenly, a huge explosion rocked the battlefield, sending debris flying and creating a massive cloud of smoke. The intensity of the blast left everyone stunned. Amidst the smoke and chaos, Red looked around, trying to get his bearings. The explosion had left the area in disarray, but he knew he had to act fast. With a sudden surge of power, the earth around Red began to shift and form, creating a protective barrier. His skill, Elemental Sword Steel Field, had activated, surrounding him with a shield of earth and rock. Talk about a glow-up. Without hesitation, Red sliced through the rocks, his blade cutting through the earthen shield with ease. He was ready to take on whatever came next. The rocks were left in pieces, like a broken piñata at a birthday party gone wrong. Suddenly, a bright light flared up, turning the battlefield into an impromptu rave. Red was left blinded, squinting like someone who just walked out of a movie theater into broad daylight. Seizing the moment, the main character attacked from behind, ready to turn the tables. With a swift motion, the main character sliced through the air, his voice ringing out with the confidence of someone who just found the last slice of pizza. "Got you," he exclaimed, ready to claim his victory. Zeke Draker deflected the aura blade with a precision that left everyone stunned, as if he just pulled off the ultimate gaming combo. The mysterious red figure began repairing, like a glitchy NPC resetting for another round. Zeke stood there, mouth agape, his mind clearly screaming, "What just happened?" Before Zeke could process, the red figure lashed out again, slashing through the air. Zeke barely jumped back in time, sliding across the ground like he was on a slip and slide from hell. The red figure noted Zeke's strange abilities, sounding more impressed than a judge on a talent show seeing the next big act. The red figure began speaking, reminding Zeke of his earlier question about his identity, like a plot twist no one saw coming. Zeke braced himself, ready for the reveal. The red figure acknowledged Zeke's skill, deciding he was worthy of knowing his name. With a dramatic flair, the red figure introduced himself as Kane Gaiman's Constantinus, like he was dropping the ultimate mic. Zeke was not having it. Not only was Kane a Gaiman's, but he also had the audacity to flaunt that Constantinus name like it was no big deal. That name though, Constantinus? That was some next-level imperial bloodline energy right there. Zeke couldn't even. Constantinus was not just any surname, it was the surname, reserved for the Roman Empire's imperial bloodline. And those middle names? Only the creme de la creme, the Electroprince families, got to rock those. Zeke's mind was blown. Did this mean House Gaiman's, his powerful family, was actually one of those fancy Electroprince families of the Roman Empire? Like, what even was this plot twist? Zeke stood there, shocked, trying to process this new information. It was all getting a bit too much. Suddenly, the system dropped another bomb. Slay a target with miasma and get bonus points. Miasma? Zeke had no clue what that was, but it sounded sketchy. But one thing was for sure, that energy radiating off Kane was giving off major dangerous vibes. Zeke could feel it in his bones. Kane wasn't playing around, whipping out a massive blue light sword that screamed, "Boss fight." He admitted he never thought he'd find a worthy opponent in such a remote place, but here they were. Kane promised to go all out, giving Zeke the respect of a full-powered showdown and even an honorable exit. Zeke knew his basic moves wouldn't cut it against that glowing beast of a sword. Even with his elemental blade, he wasn't polished enough to counter Kane's power. Time to dig deep and pull out something crazy. Zeke unleashed his dragon-scale thrust, but even that wasn't enough to take Kane down. Kane's abilities were next-level enhancement, aura deflection, insane defense, and regeneration. As long as he had his powers, landing a fatal blow seemed impossible. Zeke realized he had to drag Kane down to his level. Activating mana reflection, he aimed to turn the tables and even the playing field. Kane was caught off guard, his eyes widening in disbelief. Suddenly, Hersion's function stopped, leaving him utterly confused. Facing each other, Kane demanded to know what Zeke had just done. Zeke, playing it cool, shrugged and claimed he had no idea what Kane was talking about. Kane, not buying it for a second, laughed it off as amusing. He declared that if Zeke didn't want to answer, that was fine by him. Kane, with a smirk, added that figuring out an enemy's tricks himself was part of the joy of battle. Both of them readied themselves for the next move. In a flash, they both launched towards each other, the tension reaching its peak. Their mighty auras clashed, creating a spectacular show of power and determination. The battle was on, and neither was backing down. The clash of their powers reached its peak, resulting in a massive explosion that lit up the battlefield. The aftermath left destruction in its wake, a testament to the intensity of their fight. Zeke Draker found himself bleeding, his healing factor struggling to keep up. He cursed his luck, realizing the severity of his situation. Collapsed in a puddle of his own blood, a deep cut across his stomach, Zeke Draker knew he was in serious trouble. Despite his dire state, Zeke managed to catch Kane's words, acknowledging his skill as expected of the Draker bloodline. Zeke, confused and weakened, asked how Kane knew about his lineage. Kane explained that the only force capable of temporarily halting Hersion's functions was the Draker's mana severance. He noted that Zeke had used that very sword technique in their final exchange. Kane pointed out that Zeke's technique resembled the Draker family's secret dragon-slaying arts. Zeke acknowledged the similarity but was shocked that Kane, an Imperial Knight, knew about the forbidden dragon-scale thrust. This could only mean one thing: the Gaimans had betrayed the family by handing over their secret techniques to the Empire. Talk about a family drama leveling up to international scandal. Zeke coughed up blood, his condition worsening by the second. The corrosion spreading through his body was taking its toll, and it wasn't looking good. Kane swung his sword, noting how far the corrosion had spread. He admitted it must be painful but said leaving Zeke like this wouldn't be honorable after such a brave fight. In a swift move, Kane's sword found its mark, stabbing Zeke. The situation was going from bad to worse for our protagonist. Kane delivered the final blow, stabbing Zeke. The battle had reached its climax, and it wasn't looking good for Zeke. As Kane delivered the final blow, Zeke's eyes dimmed, the light fading fast. Kane muttered a solemn farewell, wishing for Zeke to rest in peace, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. Zeke's body went limp, the finality of the moment settling in as the life drained from his form. Kane turned away, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Zeke had been a formidable foe, a worthy opponent he hadn't encountered in a long time. As Kane walked, a strange sensation prickled at his skin. Something was off. His hand flew to his neck, fingers brushing against a fresh cut. When had that happened? Before he could ponder further, Zeke's body vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. Kane whipped around, eyes wide. How was this possible? A mechanical voice rang out, announcing the use of a top-grade healing potion, Salvation. Suddenly, Kane's neck bore a deep gash, his wounds and stamina instantly restored as if by some unseen force. What kind of trickery was this? Zeke Draker stumbled, his body giving way as he crashed to the ground. A harsh cough racked his frame, his breath coming in ragged gasps. In a moment of clarity, he realized that if he hadn't stashed a healing potion in his shortcut slot, he would have been a goner right then and there. Talk about a close call. As the potion took effect, he could feel his wounds knitting together. But the damage ran deeper than the surface. His insides still screamed from the aura-inflicted injuries that no potion could heal. His vision blurred, the world spinning around him as he fought to stay conscious. His last thought before darkness took him was that he couldn't let his enemy get the best of him. Coming to, Zeke's gaze locked onto the potion in his hand. He needed to recover and fast. His territory depended on it. Zeke barely had time to process his surroundings before he noticed Kane's body nearby. His mind raced, wondering what had happened here. But before he could dwell on it, a massive dragon loomed into view. Okay, not what he expected to see today. Zeke stood there, utterly stunned. This was getting out of hand faster than he could keep up. In a flash, Zeke activated Gluttony. If he was going down, he'd at least go down fighting. Gluttony surged forward, devouring Kane's body. Suddenly, a system notification popped up, announcing that his stamina, mental power, and mana were all refilling. Well, that was a plot twist he didn't see coming. Zeke absorbed the remnants of Kane's power, his body pulsing with a strange, new energy. Suddenly, his eyes snapped open as he jolted awake with a gasp. Talk about a power nap. Scrambling to his feet, he muttered about how close he'd come to dying. Gluttony had saved him, and he couldn't help but wonder why that particular sin had crossed his mind in the nick of time. His eyes landed on a striking set of red armor lying nearby. Wait a minute, was that Kane's armor? How did it get there? As he stared at the armor, a sudden notification echoed in his mind. A voice asked if he would like to register himself as the user of the armor. Well, that was convenient, but the name wasn't popping up. Typical tech glitch even in a fantasy world. He waited a moment, wondering if he should try again. Suddenly, another message came through. He had been registered as the user of the armor. Score. The armor's form could be decided according to his will, and there were currently 3 magic circles that could be activated from the 28 great magic circles engraved in the armor. Now, this was getting interesting. He couldn't believe it. The armor's functions were way better than he expected. But wearing it right now would be a one-way ticket to getting caught by the Imperial goons. Better to take it off for now and hope he could use it later after changing its form. Time to bounce. As he moved, a strange smell hit his nose. What was that? His stomach dropped. The smell was unmistakable. Blood and corpses. This was not good. Silence fell as he took in the grim scene before him. This was no ordinary mess. It looked like a full-on human experiment gone wrong. This was no ordinary mess. It looked like a full-on human experiment gone wrong. The kind of stuff that would make even the shadiest scientists side-eye. Clearly, these Imperial goons had been up to no good. Suddenly, alarms blared as someone spotted an intruder. Guards started shouting, scrambling to catch whoever had the audacity to crash their sketchy science party. The intruder wasn't there just to ruin their day. They knew about the experiments, the lives being messed with, and even sensed some magically formulated poison in the air. Not your average home invasion. Silence fell for a moment, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Whatever was about to happen, it wasn't going to be pretty. The intruder realized the poison in the air wasn't just any poison. It was the kind that could bypass even the toughest resistance. Basically, the VIP of poisons. And just like that, the intruder felt that poison had done its thing. Not the best news, but at least they knew what they were dealing with. Quick thinking kicked in, and the intruder used an upper-class antidote. But the situation was far from over. They had to be ready for whatever came next. A brief pause, a moment to catch their breath. The intruder knew they had to keep moving. The mission was clear. They needed the lab's research materials. Whatever was in there, it was important enough to risk everything. And since it was an imperial lab, there was a chance it held secrets about the rose disease. The kind of secrets that could change everything. As they stepped into the lab, a voice echoed, catching them off guard. It was him, the one they had been searching for. The group exchanged glances, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. Silence filled the room as they processed the revelation, hearts pounding with anticipation. Then, out of nowhere, a blade materialized, glowing with an aura that left everyone in awe. Like, what even was that? The blade shimmered, its light dancing across the walls, casting an ethereal glow that seemed to pulse with energy. Eyes widened as the group took in the sight, the blade's presence shifting the atmosphere entirely. The tension was real, each second stretching out as they tried to comprehend what was happening. In that moment, everything felt surreal, the lab's secrets beginning to unravel in ways they never expected. As the lab's secrets began to unravel, the atmosphere grew tense, almost like the calm before a storm. The crest and magic pointed to one conclusion: he was part of the Desert Scorpion clan, known for their forbidden magic. Not just any member, but an executive-level Sixth Circle practitioner. This was going to be a pain to deal with. The Empire collaborating with such individuals was a twist no one saw coming. Suddenly, a skill was activated: mana reflection. Things were about to get interesting. The unexpected turn of events left everyone stunned. The question hung in the air: was he a pure-blooded? The tension was palpable as the realization dawned. This was no ordinary situation. A brief pause, a moment of silence as everyone processed the revelation. The truth was out: he was a synthetic chimera. The plot thickens, and not in a good way. A maniacal laughter echoed, claiming this was his greatest masterpiece. He boasted that even a Draker wouldn't stand a chance against him. Someone had a serious case of overconfidence. The scene settled, but the tension remained. The stage was set for a showdown that no one was prepared for. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The main character braced himself, ready to block whatever came his way next. With a grunt, he held his ground, blocking the incoming attack with all his might. The clash sent a shockwave through the air, making it clear this wasn't going to be a walk in the park. But our guy wasn't just about defense. In a swift move, he deflected the claws, turning the tables in a blink. Talk about a power move. Suddenly, a glow emanated from his feet, like he was channeling some serious energy. The aura around his feet was lit, and it was clear he was just getting started. With a quick sidestep, he dodged the next attack, making his opponent stumble. Smooth moves, right? Then, in a flash, he used his signature shadowless steps, leaving his opponent confused and off balance. The main character was bringing his A-game, and it was a sight to behold. With a swift motion, Zeke Draker slashed through the air, his blade cutting sharply as he pressed his advantage. Zeke wasn't messing around. He made sure there were no blind spots, his focus razor-sharp. The Chimera roared in frustration, clearly not enjoying being on the receiving end of Zeke's skills. Zeke knew he couldn't waste time here. The longer this dragged on, the higher the chance of reinforcements showing up, and he was not about that life. Suddenly, a system notification popped up, offering him the chance to activate innate authority Draconic control. It asked if he'd like to subjugate the Draconic target. Talk about perfect timing. Zeke's eyes widened as he realized that Draconic control might actually be possible. This fight just got a whole lot more interesting. Zeke wasn't playing around anymore. With a fierce glare, he activated his dragon dignity, commanding the beast before him to submit. The dragon, once towering and terrifying, now seemed to shrink under Zeke's gaze. This was going to be a total vibe shift. The dragon let out a pitiful whimper. The system confirmed its fear had been instilled in this once trivial dragon. Who knew dragons could be such scaredy cats? Zeke smirked as the system notified him that Draconic control's effect had increased. The Chimera must have had some dragon traits after all. The system asked if he wanted to activate dragonic control to subjugate the target. Well, obviously. Without hesitation, Zeke pressed yes. It was time to subjugate this dragon and show it who was boss. Chains materialized out of thin air, glowing with an eerie light. This was about to get real. The chains wrapped around the dragon, binding it tightly. The beast struggled, but it was no use. Zeke had total control now. Zeke couldn't help but pet the dragon, a smirk on his face. Nice. He had a new pet now, and it was actually pretty gentle. Who knew dragons could be such softies? Just as Zeke was enjoying his new dragon pet, a hooded man stood frozen in shock, his plan clearly backfiring. The chimera he was supposed to control was not responding to his commands. Zeke, with a smirk, commanded his new dragon to bite the hooded man. The dragon, now under Zeke's control, lunged forward. The hooded man didn't stand a chance. In a swift motion, the dragon obeyed, and the man fell, his fate sealed. Zeke looked at the dragon, curiosity sparking in his eyes. He wondered aloud about the man who had previously controlled the dragon. Zeke's eyes widened as he realized the man's identity. Gurav al-Rahmani, the second in command of the Scorpion clan. Zeke pondered the situation, trying to piece together the puzzle. He thought Gurav was just a high-ranking member of the Scorpion clan. But before he could finish his thought, an unexpected interruption occurred. The dragon let out a sound, catching Zeke off guard. A voice echoed, offering Zeke the chance to name the subjugated dragon. Named dragons could be summoned by their master whenever they called. Zeke looked at the dragon, considering the offer. Did the dragon wish to be given a name? Zeke decided to name the dragon Gurav, a name that just popped into his head. He wondered if the dragon would like it, but it was too late to change it now. The dragon was registered as Gurav, and Zeke joked about the dragon's reaction to its new name. The dragon didn't seem too thrilled, but the name was set. The scene shifted, leaving Zeke and Gurav behind for a moment. A new presence made itself known, setting the stage for what was to come. A voice echoed, expressing surprise at the turn of events. Zeke Murray's name was called out, drawing attention to his actions. It was confirmed that Zeke had truly eliminated Cowardly Paolo, a feat that seemed to impress the mysterious voice. The voice acknowledged Zeke's achievement, stating that they keep their promises and that Zeke had proved himself worthy of belief. The voice continued, praising valiant warriors and expressing a deep respect for strong fighters, as if they were their own children. The voice continued, expressing a wish to treat them with the same care and respect as their own children. Children, they scoffed, the type that could be freely used as tools? The irony wasn't lost on them. He really said that to their face. That piece of work had some nerve. They vowed right then and there to make him pay with their own two hands. Take a look at this, Zeke Murray. The tension was palpable as the focus shifted. It was impressive, prepared for something big. The anticipation hung in the air. Didn't he say he wanted to be a business partner? Then he'd need proof of trust to match that claim. The challenge was laid down. There was no doubt about it. The size and weight. It was the real deal. The proof was right there in front of them. The moment hung heavy, the weight of the situation pressing down. Silence stretched, the kind that made ears ring and hearts race. A voice cut through the quiet, asking if they liked what they saw. The question lingered, waiting for a response that seemed inevitable. Of course, the boss liked it. Everything was going according to plan, or so it seemed. The next step was clear, putting K on top. But, as always, there was a catch. The issue? Pabella had caught on. She knew they were the ones who attacked, and the jig was up. The knights and mages they used as cover were blown. It was a messy setup, and it had backfired spectacularly. While they were at it, someone wanted to send a warning to those nasty pirate bastards. Because why not add more drama to the mix? But first, a quick lesson for those pirates. Let them know that the big boss of the southern continent is none other than Murray. And guess what? He wants someone to attack Pabella. Drama just keeps getting better. Wait, what? That's right, even the characters are confused. This plot twist came out of nowhere. Someone's stepping up, though. They're heading to Pabella to spread the word about Murray's grand plan. But before they jet off, there's a tiny favor to ask. Give someone some power so they can become the new core of the syndicate. No big deal, right? Silence falls as the weight of the request sinks in. The tension is real. Someone's taking responsibility for being the backer. They're stepping up, ready to support the new core. As for the others, well, they've got a different role to play. The cartel's greatest hitmen and squad are being assigned. Things are getting serious, and the stakes just keep getting higher. The cartel's greatest hitmen and squad were being assigned, and things were getting serious. The stakes just kept getting higher, and the tension was palpable. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. The pieces were moving, and the game was far from over. They would be very helpful, indeed. That man, whoever he was, seemed to hold the key to something big. Cut to the territory of the Pabella cartel, under the control of Paulo Santos. The scene was set for something intense. The air was thick with tension. Something was about to go down and everyone could feel it. Abel was on the scene, but the investigation was already over. Or so they thought. The Imperial Intelligence Bureau had already combed through the place, and according to them, there was nothing else to find. Abel had received the results, but something didn't sit right with him. Abel couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. He started investigating, and it was clear there had been at least one squad of Mage Sand Knights there, and a fight had gone down. As Abel picked through the dirt, someone called out to him. But Abel was in the zone, focused on uncovering the truth. He wasn't about to be distracted. Abel muttered to himself that there was only one person there, at least a Red Knight. The voice from earlier was confused, asking what he meant by that. Abel ignored the voice and continued to visualize the man he was thinking of. This man had dealt with everyone there, Abel thought to himself. Abel was shocked to find traces that the Intelligence Bureau had been there. There must have been something they couldn't find out, he thought. Abel was determined to know what the Empire was hiding. He wasn't going to stop until he found out. As Abel started to walk away, the voice from earlier asked if he was really going to look into the Bureau and what if problems arose later. Abel stopped and turned to face the voice, calling out William's name. Abel yelled that there was something he couldn't miss there. His instincts as a detective were telling him that something was off. Abel continued, saying that William, of all people, should know how much this meant to him. Abel wasn't done yet, his fiery gaze burning with determination as he declared his ambitious goal. He wanted to make Drakkar and the entire Empire his. Talk about aiming for the stars, right? The sun dipped low over the Pabella cartel port, casting long shadows and painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The air was thick with tension, a perfect backdrop for whatever was about to go down. Suddenly, a boat came into view, drifting quietly into the port. Abel's eyes narrowed as he spotted it, clearly not expecting to see a random boat just chilling there. Before he could even process it, a man leaned over the edge of the boat, shouting down at him. The guy seemed pretty worked up, demanding to know just who Abel thought he was. Abel didn't hesitate. With a swift leap, he was airborne, his blade flashing as he slashed at the man above. No time for chit-chat when there was a point to be made. The man went down fast, tumbling from his perch with a yelp. Abel wasn't messing around, this was his moment, and he wasn't about to let some random guy ruin it. But just as quickly, someone else on the boat snatched up a sword, their eyes locking onto the falling man. Abel barely had time to react. With a swift, almost casual motion, the sword was hurled through the air, aimed right at the man Abel had just taken down. Things were getting intense, and Abel knew he had to stay on his toes. Zeke was all about efficiency, making sure his opponents wouldn't make a splash literally. He called out for Simon to join him, ready to take on whatever came next. Simon appeared, his presence as steady as ever. Zeke couldn't help but think about how Simon had been the one to teach him everything he knew about Southern-style martial arts and, well, the finer points of taking people out. Talk about a resume. Flashback time. Even in the grimy world of the McCain cartel, Simon had been the only one Zeke could trust. And now, after all this time and some serious life upgrades, their teamwork was still on point. Zeke looked at Simon, thinking it would be awesome to have him on his side for whatever was coming next. The city was crawling with forces, and Zeke knew they had to play it smart. Simon asked if there was a way to sneak in through the central area. Zeke, of course, had a plan. This place used to be Toe Empire territory, so Zeke figured there had to be some underground paths still kicking around. Simon wasn't convinced going underground sounded like a maze with no GPS. But Zeke just told him to watch and learn. Zeke wasn't worried about the maze-like underground. With his minimap guide function, navigating through it was going to be a breeze, almost like having a GPS in a video game. But the path ahead seemed crowded with forces, so Zeke decided to take a detour. No need to rush into trouble when you can just swipe left on it, right? Zeke also realized that the big bosses, the Red Knights and above, weren't showing up on his map. That explained his unexpected encounter with Kane last time. It was like trying to avoid spoilers but still getting hit with a major plot twist. As they neared their destination, Zeke laid out the plan. From here on out, they would split up. Simon and the others were to set up bombs in as many places as possible, while Zeke would take on the second-in-command, Mateo. It was like assigning quests in a game, each with its own boss battle. Simon and the crew acknowledged the plan. They were ready to set up those bombs and cause some chaos. No pressure, just your typical save-the-world kind of stuff. With the plan set, the team prepared to split up and tackle their respective missions. It was game time, and each of them had a crucial role to play. As they went their separate ways, the underground tunnels echoed with their determination. Zeke was on a mission, and failure was not an option. It was like the final level of a game, and he was ready to beat it. Zeke pondered the consequences of his mission. Taking out Mateo would surely ignite a furious reaction from Pabella's boss, potentially sparking an all-out war between McCain and Pabella. The stakes were high, and the tension was palpable. The weight of the decision hung in the air, as Zeke considered the potential fallout. It was a moment of silence, a brief pause in the storm that was brewing. But then a thought struck him. Was this really what Don Juan intended? The pieces didn't quite fit, and Zeke couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Don Juan was known for his caution, always looking out for his associates. It seemed unlikely that he would send his disciples into a situation without considering the potential fallout. Unless, of course, he had a different plan in mind. Zeke's mind raced as he tried to piece together the puzzle. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that Don Juan might be using this ambush as a warning to Pabella. If that was the case, then Don Juan might consider the sacrifice of his men as a necessary evil, a small price to pay for a larger goal. The pieces were starting to come together, but Zeke wasn't ready to accept that outcome. Zeke's determination flared as he made his decision. Things wouldn't go as Don Juan wished, because he was going to see this through. Mateo would fall, and the consequences would be dealt with later. It was time to level up and face the final boss. Zeke stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next, but what he saw left him utterly stunned. The scene before him was so unexpected, it was like finding out avocado toast was actually bad for you. He took a moment to process the bizarre sight, his mind racing to make sense of it all. As he scanned the area, something felt off. The vibe was all wrong, like a TikTok without any likes. He had assumed Pabella and the Empire were in cahoots, but there wasn't a single Imperial lackey in sight. Even the minimap was ghost town quiet, no reactions, no nothing. Zeke's confusion deepened. This was not what he had anticipated. Suddenly, a voice rang out, questioning if they had been hiding. Orders were barked to capture someone alive. Zeke realized things were about to get real, and he needed to be ready. Zeke barely had time to process what was happening when suddenly, chaos erupted. Out of nowhere, a loud groan echoed, setting the tone for the madness that was about to unfold. Someone let out a frustrated yell, clearly not ready for whatever was coming next. Then, a command boomed out, calling for the mage squad to step up. Things were getting serious and fast. In a flash, someone activated swift steps, and the energy in the room shifted instantly. The scene was pure chaos, with everyone scrambling, trying to figure out their next move. Zeke knew he had to think fast. This wasn't the time to freeze up. With everything moving at lightning speed, the pressure was on, and the stakes had never been higher. The tension was already sky-high, but now it was about to go stratospheric. The so-called Imperial forces were looking pretty weak, like they'd been hitting the gym less and the snack bar more. And seriously, were they trying to pull off the whole "we sent our best" vibe with these guys? Because if so, they were failing harder than a diet on cheat day. The disdain was palpable. These bastards were really getting on his nerves, like a bad Wi-Fi signal during a Netflix binge. He was done playing games. One chance was all they were going to get, like a final warning before the ultimate smackdown. And just like that, the skill dragon's dignity was activated. Things were about to get real, like really real. He wasn't here to play around. If they wanted to live, they could leave now. But if they were sticking around, they better be ready to face the consequences, like a bad guy in a superhero movie who just won't take the hint. The ultimatum was clear: leave or face the music. And by music, he meant a beatdown of epic proportions. The silence was deafening, like when you send a risky text and wait for the reply. The air was thick with anticipation. Everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the next move. It was like the calm before the storm, and this storm was going to be a Category 5. The question hung in the air: what was the Empire even trying to do, coming all this way to the south? It was like showing up to a pool party with a snowsuit, just plain confusing. The confusion was real. What was going on? It was like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, and no one had the cheat codes. just when the confusion couldn't get any more extra. Plot twist: a lone roach was out here messing up the whole vibe. Cue the dramatic gasp. The squad was losing it. How did he even get here? Where did he come from? It was like he just popped out of nowhere, and now everyone was screaming internally, demanding to know who this mystery guy was. Silence. The kind that makes you check if your headphones are still working. Everyone was just standing there, processing the chaos. The tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Or, just awkwardly stare at it. Someone groaned, breaking the silence. It was the universal sound of, "What even is life right now?" Then the order came down: take him out. This guy had messed with the wrong plan, and now he was about to face the consequences. Zeke was slicing through zombies like a boss, but he couldn't help but wonder, how did this guy summon so many at once? That kind of power usually meant a high-level black mage. But something wasn't adding up. Zeke paused mid-swing, his brain catching up to his sword. Most black mages with that kind of juice were part of the Scorpion clan. So why wasn't this guy repping their colors? Where was his squad at? Zeke wasn't about to leave questions unanswered. He activated his dragon eye, ready to get some answers. Zeke wasn't messing around. With a swift motion, he took care of business, his frustration clear. Arrogant bastards indeed. He glanced at his system, checking his progress. No time to waste, there was more to do. A smirk crossed his face as he saw the results. Nice, just what he needed. With a quick slash, he finished off another opponent, his movements precise and efficient. Zeke paused, looking at his system bar. Was that the last one? He hoped so, ready to move on. Suddenly, the black mage looked down, his expression unreadable. Something was up. Before Zeke could react, the black mage disappeared. What? He left? That was unexpected. Zeke shrugged it off, turning to walk away. He'd deal with that guy later, turning him into points. For now, he was done here. Zeke strolled along, thinking about how just a bit more and he'd reach Mateo's office. But of course, he knew that guy wouldn't just let him walk away. And just like that, a slash came out of nowhere, aiming straight for Zeke's throat. Classic. A dagger pressed against his throat. Zeke couldn't help but think how he'd been waiting for this moment. And there he was, Simon, right on time like a bad penny. Simon held a dagger close to Zeke's face, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Zeke couldn't help but think how far he had come, only to end up in this mess. And then it hit him. The guy in front of him was none other than Don Juan. Zeke questioned who had ordered his elimination before things got out of hand. Simon leaned in closer, dagger still in hand, and revealed that the boss wanted to take down the Pabella cartel. He sneered, saying there wouldn't be room for a mid-sized guy like Zeke in that place. Zeke raised his hands in surrender, pointing out that even if the Pabella cartel lost their distribution network, Simon's crew would still use the syndicate through K. Simon smirked, confident they would manage just fine without Zeke. Zeke couldn't help but ask why Simon wasn't killing him already, calling him by his old nickname, Shadowless Ghost. Simon was taken aback, flustered even. He demanded to know how Zeke knew his previous name. Zeke calmly dropped the bombshell, calling him Simon Zapatero. Zeke wasn't done dropping bombshells. He knew Simon's past and his connection to Don Juan. Simon was absolutely floored, his mind racing with questions. Before Simon could even process what was happening, Zeke pulled a dagger to his own throat. Simon was freaking out, demanding to know what Zeke was talking about. Zeke calmly laid it out. Simon wanted to protect the last bloodline of the Cusco kingdom. Simon was stunned into silence. Zeke just smirked and said, "Ian." Simon's glare could have melted steel. He was desperate to know how Zeke knew all this. Zeke took a step forward, and you could almost hear the dramatic music cue. Here it comes, he thought, ready to drop another truth bomb. A dagger materialized out of thin air, heading straight for Simon. But Zeke was quick on the draw and caught the dagger midair. In a swift move, Zeke slammed the dagger down, leaving Simon in a state of shock and disbelief. Simon was absolutely fuming, demanding to know just how much Zeke knew and who he really was. Zeke casually questioned his own identity before dropping the bomb, revealing he was one of the direct descendants of Drakkar. The name Zeke Drakkar hung in the air, leaving Simon in even more shock. Simon couldn't believe it, questioning if Zeke was perhaps the rumored youngest Blue Knight. Zeke clarified that his actions were his own and not related to his family, assuring Simon that he didn't need to worry about the Drakkar influence. Simon, still processing everything, questioned why Zeke revealed his name at all, pointing out he could have hidden it till the end. The tension was palpable as Simon tried to make sense of Zeke's revelation. The room fell silent, the weight of the revelation settling in. Zeke simply responded with a knowing look, leaving Simon even more confused. Zeke dropped a truth bomb, urging Simon to ally with him instead of Don Juan. He promised to protect the bloodline of Cusco and even help rebuild the kingdom, which, let's be real, sounded way too good to be true. Simon stood there, mouth probably hanging open, thinking, what even is this plot twist? Zeke wasn't done, though. He acknowledged it was a lot to take in but insisted Simon already knew deep down that staying with McCain was a total dead end. Zeke laid it all out, asking Simon to think about what would happen if he followed Don Juan's orders and took him out right there. He questioned if Don Juan had ever sent reinforcements for Simon or his crew, which, spoiler alert, he hadn't. Simon's mind was blown. Zeke was right, they had always been left to fend for themselves. Zeke dropped another truth bomb, explaining that after the Cusco kingdom collapsed, the cartels swooped in and took over. Don Juan probably wanted the previous royal knights, like Simon, gone for good. And as for the princess, she'd likely be sold off to the highest bidder among the Cusco rebels. Talk about a messed up situation. But let's rewind 10 years, when the Cusco kingdom took an L. Simon, being the MVP that he is, grabbed the newborn princess and dipped to the border for safety. He went full outlaw mode to level up his strength, all for the big plan taking down the rebels and putting the princess back on the throne where she belongs. Fast forward, and that's exactly why he ended up as a hitman under Don Juan. Plot twist: Don Juan already knew all about Simon's past. In the end, Simon got disposed of because, well, unstable factors. And the princess? Sold off to the rebel forces. Before kicking the bucket, he asked someone to look after the princess, but by the time they found her, silence. The weight of the past hung heavy, the fate of the princess unknown. That's why the plea came: leave McCain, Simon. Time was running out and there was no room to question how they knew. But yes, the plot thickens. McCain, who everyone thought was as stable as a rock, was starting to shake. Talk about a major red flag. From the boss's birthday to getting tangled up with Pabella, things were getting weirder by the minute. And all because of Zeke Draker. But what was his ultimate goal? He might have said there was no room for a mid-sized troublemaker like him, but whatever. For now, he wanted the two cartels to start going at each other. And then the plot thickens even more. Once it's all over, he's going for McCain. Talk about a major power move. The plot twist: his real goal was Don Juan all along. He was serious, Simon. He really wanted him to join in. But first, he needed to promise him two things. And not just him, but his subordinates as well. And honor the promise to protect the Cusco. And then rebuild the kingdom. Talk about a major glow-up. He swore it on his honor as a knight. No cap, this was getting intense. Suddenly, Cusco's guard commander, Simon Sapataro, rolls up and greets his master, Zeke Draker, with all the formality of a butler at a tea party. Zeke wasn't having it though, telling Simon to cut the formalities and get up. He needed to fill him in on the deets while they made their exit. First order of business? Locating Simon's underlings. Simon assured him that his squad would activate the plan and meet up to escape once he gave the signal. Zeke told him to send it now and rally his crew at the underground path entrance. Simon confirmed he had already tied up their target, Mateo, on the inside. With a plan in place, Zeke gave a casual farewell, ready to dip out of the scene. But then, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the air, like someone just stepped on a Lego. A frantic voice yelled out, accusing someone of being a total jerk and questioning if McCain would be safe. Zeke wasn't having any of it, though. He made it clear that if war broke out between the two, Mateo would be the reason. No cap, he was not about to let Mateo off the hook. With a dramatic flair, Zeke told Mateo to bite the dust, invoking some ancient-sounding curse about those who wield their swords against McCain resting for eternity. Mateo, now gagged and struggling, could only let out muffled protests, like a kid trying to talk with a mouth full of marshmallows. Zeke Draker held up Pabella's secret ledgers like he just found the ultimate plot twist in a reality show. He knew it was time to make his move. Simon rushed toward Zeke, shouting that he had sent the signal to his subordinates. Zeke felt the adrenaline kicking in, like he just chugged an energy drink. Zeke whipped out his sword, telling Simon to get behind him. He was ready to face whatever came next. Arrows flew toward them, but Zeke blocked them with his shield like a pro gamer dodging noob attacks. Pirates burst in, screaming about intruders. Zeke knew they were in for a wild ride. Zeke unleashed his elemental sword, lighting up the place like a 4th of July fireworks show. The battlefield was now a blazing inferno, and Zeke stood ready amidst the flames. As they moved through a dark tunnel, a voice echoed, introducing their new boss. Zeke and Simon exchanged a glance, knowing they had to adapt to this unexpected twist. Zeke and Simeon strode through the corridor, the echoes of their newfound authority bouncing off the walls as people bowed in their path. The air was thick with tension and the weight of their sudden rise in power. Zeke's expression hardened as he glanced around, urging Simeon to keep moving. They didn't have time to waste, and the last thing they needed was an audience. With a shared look of determination, they broke into a run, the urgency of their situation pushing them forward. Zeke's eyes narrowed as he sensed the presence of their pursuers. They had caught up faster than expected. Zeke came to an abrupt halt, turning to face Simeon with a commanding gaze. It was time to split up. He would take the heat, leading their pursuers away while Simeon and the others made their escape. Zeke instructed Simeon to seek out Kay from the syndicate, assuring him that his name would be enough. Simeon hesitated, concern flashing across his face as he mentioned the princess entangled with the McCain cartel. Zeke's confidence didn't waver. He had predicted this very scenario, and his plan was already in motion. A flashback revealed Zeke's meticulous preparation. He had memorized every detail of the plan, including the rescue of the confined girl from the McCain cartel, using the chaos of the day of action as cover. With a smirk, Zeke confirmed that the girl had already been saved. His plan was unfolding perfectly. Meanwhile, in the southern continent, Don Juan was losing his cool in his fancy mansion. He slammed his fist on the table, yelling about how none of this made any sense. It had been ages since they hit the Pavella cartel, and now the attacks were getting out of hand. Everyone in the room was sweating bullets, feeling the heat from Don's rage. He went on about how many times they'd been hit by those sneaky attacks. Half of McCain's executives were gone, and Don was not happy about it. With a heavy sigh, he plopped down, muttering to himself. Just then, he started thinking about the boss and Simon, wondering what they were up to. Snapping out of his thoughts, he looked up and asked what was going on. Someone suggested distancing himself from McCain for a while, but that only made him question if he was running away like a coward. He denied it, explaining that the crazy pirates were blinded by revenge and would soon be charging straight at McCain without even knowing their place. They would have to use that against them. Don figured out that he meant to lure them there and try to wipe them out in one go. He also mentioned that Don could give his commands from his villa in Tawani. Don nodded, agreeing that it sounded good. Don reminded everyone that crisis had always made them stronger and this time would be no different. The guys shouted in agreement, hyped up and ready for action. They walked, the tension palpable as they prepared for what was to come. Suddenly, a guy got up and turned around, only to find himself in a rather precarious situation. The protagonist, Zeke Draker, held a dagger to his throat, complimenting him on his talking skills. The guy gasped, clearly taken by surprise. The man begged for his life, claiming he was just following orders and had lured the boss to Tawani as instructed. Zeke Draker, however, showed no mercy and swiftly ended the man's life, praising him for a job well done before it was over. With a smirk, Zeke expressed his gratitude, stating that he could finally enjoy the main dish now. Talk about a power move. Cut to Tawani Don Juan's lavish villa, a place that screamed wealth and power. Inside, Don Juan fumed, furious that he had been dragged all the way there. He vowed to wipe out those pesky pirates to the last man. Don Juan paced around his villa, the weight of his anger palpable in the air. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the villa. Don Juan paused, wondering if he had any servants left who would dare disturb him. With a sharp turn, Don Juan barked out, demanding whoever it was to leave immediately. Zeke Draker casually strolled in, totally vibing with the whole vacation mode, but the situation was far from chill. Don Juan recognized Zeke and his expression darkened, realizing the gravity of the situation. Don Juan stared, his gaze hardening as he processed the unexpected arrival. Zeke wasn't having it, though. He shot back that Don Juan must have faced plenty of threats on his way up, so what was the big deal? Don Juan scoffed, calling the whole thing childish nonsense. Zeke smirked, saying it was perfect because he didn't want Don Juan begging for his life in tears. That would have been boring. From the standpoint of someone taking revenge, Zeke thought, seeing his enemy beg would have been a total snooze fest. Don Juan was fuming, calling Zeke an arrogant brat and ordering his guards to make him kneel. Zeke just stood there, calm and collected, while Don Juan was losing his cool. The guards were about to make their move, and things were about to get real. Zeke dropped a casual bomb, mentioning he had already taken care of everyone else, like it was no big deal. He then got all nostalgic, saying that in his past life, he didn't get to make Don Juan suffer enough and he was still salty about it. Zeke started reminiscing about the days when he had to crawl like a dog under Don Juan's orders and all the people he had to take out because of him, like it was some kind of nightmare he couldn't shake off. Don Juan was freaking out, yelling that Zeke was talking nonsense and he never made him do any of that, trying to play the innocent card. Zeke just laughed it off, like Don Juan's denial was the punchline to some dark joke. Don Juan suddenly switched gears, begging for his life, like he thought he could talk his way out of this mess. Zeke wasn't having it, calling him out for enjoying all his wealth and glory while standing on the blood of others, reminding him how desperately he used to beg. Don Juan was still trying to play the hero card, saying he was the savior chosen by God. But Zeke cut him off, not interested in his excuses. Don Juan let out a scream, like he was finally realizing this wasn't going to end well for him. Zeke wasn't done yet, letting out a frustrated groan, like he was just getting started. Zeke wasn't done yet, letting out a frustrated groan like he was just getting started. He taunted his opponent, telling them to feel the pain and suffer slowly. The tension hung heavy as Zeke asked if it was all over, his voice dripping with a mix of exhaustion and anticipation. Switching gears, he casually asked how things went on the syndicate side, like he was just catching up on some office gossip. Turns out, everything went exactly as planned. The executives who tried to side with Pabella were taken care of, and it all ended without any real punishment. Classic office politics, but with way higher stakes. Zeke nodded, satisfied. The syndicate would handle things from now on. No loose ends, no drama, just business as usual. But then, the conversation took a turn. A merchant group contract? Now that's a plot twist no one saw coming. Zeke Draker set down his wig, and the room suddenly felt like a boardroom pitch. He dropped a bombshell about the merchant group's next big move, establishing a pharmaceutical company. Talk about a glow-up from their usual hustle. Zeke wasn't done yet. He laid out the master plan, producing top-tier soma and distributing it through their new pharma venture. And if they refined it right, boom, endless medical possibilities. Transportation, logistics, you name it. They were basically building a wellness empire. Abel, though? Not so fast. He hit Zeke with the hard question: where's this production happening? And who's running the show? Plus, with their name on it, sneaking around the law was going to be a nightmare. Classic Abel. Always the voice of reason or panic. Zeke, ever the man with a plan, casually mentioned that after helping out the Cusco Kingdom, they'd snagged their cultivation permits. He had more ideas up his sleeve, but time was tight. With a quick goodbye and a cheeky "see you later, partner," to Abel, he was already mentally 3 steps ahead. Zeke paused for a second, then switched gears. Cleanup duty was calling, and it was time to get to work. He slipped a hand into his pocket, and you could almost see the gears turning in his head. Turns out, Decker had spilled the tea that the prince was still MIA after the banquet and was planning to stick around in Atlas. Drama. Zeke knew getting to the central continent would take a few days. And if he didn't hustle, well, let's just say the prince or someone else might not be thrilled about the wait. Zeke couldn't shake the feeling that someone might start getting suspicious about his delay. And if they did, they'd probably start guessing the reason behind his tardiness, which was not ideal. He glanced at the system, pondering if they already suspected him, and that was why they had summoned him. No harm in being careful, he thought. He decided to build an alibi just in case. A magic circle began to form around Zeke as he prepared to use the system's portal function. In a flash, Zeke teleported away, leaving behind the lingering traces of his magic. He found himself in the Atlas Hotel Sky Lounge, a posh place that screamed, "Fancy schmancy." Zeke turned around as he heard voices calling out to him. "Look over there," they said. "Zeke's here." And there was Callus, waving at him like he was some long-lost buddy. As expected, he was there too. Abel chimed in, acknowledging Zeke's arrival. Meanwhile, Abel was just chilling, sipping on some wine like it was a casual wine-tasting event. No big deal, just your average day with a side of chaos. Zeke Draker strolled in, bowing like he was in some royal drama, all formal and stuff. He was like, "Hey, I answered your summons, so what's up?" Callus was there, looking all serious, saying he had some super important matter to discuss. You could almost see the dramatic pause before the big reveal. And then, with a flourish, Callus brought out a wine bottle like it was the Holy Grail. Classic move, right? Turns out, William and Abel were great at their jobs but total lightweights when it came to holding their liquor. Callus was like, "But you, Zeke, you're the wild card, aren't you? That's why you're here." Zeke, being his usual observant self, mentioned Prince Karis Abel and William Zimmons, saying he could pretty much guess what they talked about. Abel, meanwhile, looked like he had something extra to say to Zeke on the side. Callus wasn't having any of the formal stuff, though. He was like, nah, no need for all that ceremony, just have a drink already. So, they all raised their glasses, Callus toasting to a pleasant time and Zeke cheers NG like it was just another casual hangout. No big deal, right? And just like that, the scene faded, leaving you wondering what wild times were ahead for this crew. As Callus was carried away, Zeke stood there, feeling a bit guilty for being the only one still standing. Talk about survivor's remorse. Am I right? Then Abel showed up, looking all apologetic. He mentioned something about closed-door training and probably interrupting. Classic Abel, always popping in at the wrong time. Zeke brushed it off, saying he was just frustrated with his lack of progress. Abel, being the smooth guy he is, suggested they grab a drink. Because what else do you do when you're frustrated? Why not? As Zeke looked at the wine glass, he couldn't help but think about Abel's suggestion. Who knew Abel was into that kind of thing? Abel poured the wine, and you could almost see the tension melting away. Or maybe that was just the wine. Abel then dropped the big question, asking Zeke what he thought of Housedraker. Zeke must have been thinking, here we go again. Abel, with a cold stare, revealed his plan to bring the Drakers to ruin one day. Talk about a plot twist. Zeke must have been wondering what he got himself into. Zeke was taken aback, clearly not expecting this turn. Abel continued, sensing a familiar scent from him, one of blood, battles, deaths, and victories. That scent, Abel explained, was exactly how a pureblood dragonslayer was supposed to smell. Zeke was the perfect role model, Abel admitted. He smelled like a predator just like him. If Zeke was a predator like Abel, he would understand what Abel was saying. Abel was frustrated. People were always going on about bloodlines. Abel questioned if this was the reason Zeke was staying close to the Empire, to bring them down. Many people Abel began had a high opinion of Atlas. But Abel thought otherwise. He believed they shouldn't be content with just one city. If they wanted to claim the top spot, they needed to become even stronger. Talk about aiming high. Abel was all about that Roman Empire grind, constantly building roads and trying to unite the North, South, and even the Eastern continent into one big happy family. The goal? Roads, culture, resources all leading back to Rome. He was dreaming big, envisioning a world transformed into a utopia where everyone is unified. Talk about having a vision. That really is something the emperor of an empire would say, isn't it? Enter Cain Gaiman's Constantinus. Yeah, that middle name Gaimans? That's the maternal family sponsoring Abel. Fancy, right? After hearing all of this, one could only arrive at one conclusion. Zeke, his blood relative, was about to get a serious offer. Abel believed that outstanding talent deserves an appropriate reward. And if anyone could give him the most dazzling treasure he would ever possess, it was Zeke. So he called out to him, come to me, Zeke. Zeke pondered Abel's offer, realizing that Abel wanted to bring him into his camp. Zeke thanked Abel for the offer but hesitated, leaving the response hanging. He had already made up his mind, and that made accepting the offer difficult. Abel warned Zeke that he would regret his decision. But Zeke was resolute he wouldn't be swayed. Zeke questioned if Abel truly thought he would become a slaughterer like him. Abel seemed to be alone, and Zeke wondered where he was. Abel mentioned that his beloved youngest brother, Zeke, said he would walk a different path, leaving Abel with no choice. Abel wondered if he should crush Zeke right then. William. Abel concluded that he had clearly given Zeke his last chance. Meanwhile, at Valhalla, right in front of the dean's office, a second-year student named Manziel Y was already planning his next move. 5 years to graduate? Yeah, no thanks. He had bigger plans and wasn't about to wait that long. So, he went ahead and submitted an early graduation application. Time to fast-track his way out of there. Manziel Y had just become a formal knight and was eager to start supporting his family as soon as possible. But being a student was holding him back from doing anything truly eye-catching. So, he decided to make a bold move and requested the dean's assistance for early graduation. And just like that, his interview was scheduled. As Manziel Y waited, someone approached him with a casual greeting, asking if he was there to see the dean too. Manziel Y confirmed with a simple yeah and asked who the other person was, clearly not recognizing him. The other person seemed just as confused, muttering that he had never seen Manziel Y before. The awkwardness was palpable. Manziel Y, taken aback, couldn't help but wonder who this guy was. The encounter was off to a confusing start. Just as the confusion hung in the air, Zeke, Diego, and Asta made their entrance with impeccable timing. It had already been a week since they last saw Asta, and the reunion was about to get interesting. Monziel's mind raced as he heard the name Asta. Could he be the same Asta from the legends? Zeke couldn't believe his eyes. Asta, one of the 5 divine knights from his past life, stood before him. There was barely any information on him, and now, here he was, a total mystery unfolding right in front of him. Asta looked exhausted, apologizing for his recent absence due to insomnia. Zeke couldn't help but notice how severe his condition seemed. Diego, ever the joker, offered to sing a lullaby to knock Asta out. But Asta, holding his head, just wanted some peace and quiet. Zeke's mind wandered back to his past life. Asta had worked for the Empire back then. If that was the case now, things were about to get complicated. Zeke thought it would be best if he could recruit Asta to his side, just like he did with Diego. The dean began explaining that the reason for the gathering was straightforward. Zeke, Diego, and another student had all applied for early graduation at the same time. The other professors had also confirmed that there were no issues with their graduation requirements. So, the dean decided to evaluate their abilities through a cooperation mission with Delpoa. Zeke's mind raced as he considered the implications. The dean asked if they had heard of Yaksha, the Black. Zeke responded that he understood Yaksha was an outlaw, an enemy of the entire continent. A public enemy was a target acknowledged by the entire continent as an enemy to be eliminated. Yaksha, the Black Knight, was one such example, and he had recently begun staying in Delpoa. The dean explained that their mission was to cooperate with the Delpoa Knight Order and subjugate him. The dean continued, explaining that outlaws were people who awakened their aura. Their combat style was fundamentally different from that of knights, which was why the Delpoa Knight Order had requested personnel of Purple Knight rank or higher. That gave them an idea of how grueling this mission would be. The dean offered a chance for anyone who wanted to back out to speak now. Diego raised his hand and asked how many rounds this test had. The dean replied that there were 3 rounds in total, and this was the first one. The dean assumed everyone would be participating and sent them off to prepare thoroughly, setting the stage for some serious prep time. As they stepped outside, Asta immediately clutched his head, groaning about a pounding headache. Clearly, the pressure was already getting to him. Asta turned around, only to hear his name being called out by the protagonist, Zeke Draker. Asta looked at Zeke, probably wondering what was up with him. Zeke, with a cheerful grin, asked Asta if he needed some medicine for his insomnia. Classic Zeke, always ready with a playful jab. Asta looked puzzled, questioning if Zeke really had medicine for his insomnia. Zeke, with a grin, reached into his pocket, claiming he had the perfect medicine for it. Asta, still skeptical, let out an uncertain hum. Asta politely declined, mentioning he had already tried all the popular medicines without success. Zeke insisted it was fine and urged Asta to try it out, suggesting they could even write a contract for future supplies. Asta, still doubtful, declined again, saying it wouldn't work anyway. But as Asta caught a whiff of the medicine, he suddenly fell asleep. Classic Zeke, always full of surprises. Asta, now awake, exclaimed that it worked, calling Zeke a master. Zeke, with a playful tone, asked if it worked that quickly and teased Asta about not reading the contract properly. Asta, now happy, seemed to have forgotten his earlier skepticism. Asta, now completely unbothered, declared that as long as he could sleep properly, nothing else mattered. Zeke, slightly amused, wondered if that was really the case. He felt a wave of relief knowing that the system store existed, where he could exchange points for rare relics. He casually mentioned that he had given Asta a strong sleeping pill called the Sandman's Sleep Sand. Zeke thought to himself that after graduating, Asta would be on his side now. Though, he couldn't help but feel anxious that none of the 5 divine knights seemed quite sane. Zeke pondered that this wasn't enough and wondered about Asta's abilities. He called out to Asta, who quickly responded with a respectful yes, master. Zeke drew his sword, suggesting they see Asta's abilities before going out on a mission. Asta spun his spear, getting ready for action. He quickly got into his stance, prepared to show his skills. Zeke's whole vibe shifted the moment he gripped that spear. Suddenly, he was all like, "Bring it on, I can totally use aura now." Asta wasn't about to back down. He charged forward, ready to take on Zeke's newfound power. Their clash was intense, the sound of metal against metal echoing through the air. Zeke stepped back, analyzing his opponent. With that spear, his reach was seriously impressive, and he was crazy good at blocking attacks. It seemed like he was more about defense than going all out on offense. If that was the case, Zeke had a plan. He'd use his phantom steps to get the upper hand. In a flash, Zeke disappeared from sight, leaving his opponent searching for him. Before anyone could react, Zeke reappeared behind his opponent, ready to strike. Just as Zeke was about to strike, Asta split his spear into two, ready to counter. Asta blocked Zeke's attack and immediately countered with a swift move. Zeke's sword was deflected, leaving him momentarily off balance. Asta seized the opportunity and launched another attack. Zeke flipped through the air, using his sword to regain his footing. Asta pulled out a dagger, and Zeke couldn't help but think that this type of attack was usually done by outlaws. He found himself enjoying the thrill of the fight. With a quick flick of his wrist, Asta threw the dagger towards Zeke. Asta swiftly put his spear back together, ready for the next move. Asta barely had a second to breathe before a dagger came flying his way. With lightning reflexes, he deflected it like a pro gamer dodging a noob attack. But the action didn't stop there. Bolts started raining down, turning the battlefield into a chaotic light show. Asta wasn't about to stand still and get turned into a pincushion. He bolted to the side, moving faster than a caffeine-fueled squirrel. Suddenly, he skidded to a halt. Zeke had seen enough of this nonsense and was ready to bring out the big guns again. With a smirk, Zeke dragged his sword through the ground, plotting something that Asta wouldn't be able to block with that spear of his. The earth itself seemed to slice open, like someone had performed a magic trick gone wrong. Asta's eyes widened as he realized the gravity of the situation. Asta stood there, stunned, probably questioning all his life choices that led him to this moment. Asta, probably regretting every life decision that led him to this moment, suddenly whipped out his cross-current spear like he meant business. The clash was inevitable, and honestly, it was about to get lit. The collision was loud, bright, and probably visible from space. Asta stood there, hands trembling, wondering if the guy he was up against was even human. As they walked, Asta was low-key salty about getting his butt handed to him by someone who claimed to be a genius. But Zeke just had to remind him that his spear was basically cheating with how OP it was. Zeke let off this crazy aura, making it clear that Asta still had a long way to go. He even dropped the hint that some serious training was about to go down. Asta just stood there, already dreading what was coming next. As Asta braced himself, Decker came in, bowing deeply and addressing him as young Master Zeke. Asta acknowledged him simply by calling his name. Decker informed Asta that he had a guest waiting. Galleon strolled in, eyes wide as he took in the grandeur of the estate, complimenting how impressive it was. Asta greeted Galleon, mentioning it had been a while since they last met. He explained that he had called him because there was something he wanted him to see. Galleon, curious, asked if there was an issue with the Stygian blade. He mentioned that since it was made with magic braziers, it should be difficult to put a scratch on it. Asta thought about how Galleon had become more famous since he used the magic brazier in his last life, making good weapons earlier this time around. Asta was determined to secure Galleon soon before anyone else discovered him, especially since Bahamut had sent his senses on him. Dressed in striking red armor, Asta prepared to address the issue at hand. Zeke Draker stood there, decked out in red armor that screamed, "Boss level unlocked." And even he was like, "Wait, how did I even get this?" Cue Galleon, looking like he'd just seen a ghost, shocked and totally not ready for this plot twist. Galleon stumbled over his words, clearly freaking out, while Zeke just shrugged. He didn't have a clue either and just wanted Galleon to ID this mystery gear. But plot twist, it wasn't something you could just casually inspect in public. Nope, this was top secret, back alley kind of business. Zeke handed over the armor like it was no big deal, but the vibe was more like, here, hold this mysterious, probably cursed artifact. He just asked Galleon to give it a once-over, casually. Galleon, now fully in professional mode, nodded like his life depended on it. Of course, head, check it out, no pressure. Just a potentially world-ending artifact in his hands. But first, Galleon bolted to the door like head just remembered he left the stove on. Apologies were thrown around, but let's be real, this armor was sketchy, and he needed to set the mood. Galleon dropped the bomb. This thing wasn't in any of his ancient artifact databases. Zip. Nada. He needed deets, something, anything to even begin figuring out what this armor was made of. Zeke went full thinking mode, eyebrows scrunched like he was trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. The gears were turning, slowly but surely. Then it hit him, his fight with Kane. That chaotic mess where the armor decided to pull a superhero move. Turns out this armor wasn't just for show. It straight up deflected an aura blade like it was swatting away a fly. Casual. Galleon stumbled to his feet, eyes wide with disbelief. He couldn't wrap his head around what he'd just witnessed. An aura blade getting deflected like it was nothing? That was some next-level stuff right there. His mind raced as he stared at the armor. There was only one metal he knew of that could pull off a move like that. The legendary metal of gods, or so the stories went. And then it hit him. Orichalcum. The mythical metal that was supposed to be just theta myth. But there it was, shining back at him, very much real and very much messing with his understanding of the world. Galleon was utterly shocked, struggling to believe what he was seeing. Orichalcum, the stuff of legends, right there in front of him. Meanwhile, Zeke couldn't help but wonder if this metal was really as precious as everyone said. Galleon was taken aback by Zeke's casual remark, questioning if he truly understood the value of what was in front of him. Galleon thought about the legends. Orichalcum, a perfect material made by the gods, with extraordinary mana conduction, could hold so much more magic than any other metal. Zeke, trying to wrap his head around it, asked how many big magic circles could be engraved into normal metal armor. Galleon was baffled by the question. Normal metals couldn't even handle large-scale magic circles, let alone multiple ones. Zeke had thought the orichalcum would be unusual, but he never imagined it would be on this level of extraordinary. Zeke wondered if it was possible to change this armor into something else. Galleon was floored, repeating in disbelief that it was orichalcum, and that there was no way this could be happening. Galleon was still processing the whole orichalcum situation. He pointed out that even if they could use the metal of the gods, the armor was already complete. Messing with it recklessly could ruin the magic circles, making it unusable. Classic catch-22, right? But then Galleon had a lightbulb moment. His master might actually be able to pull it off. Zeke, picking up on the vibe, asked if he meant Master Gallen. Galleon confirmed that his master might have the skills to change the form of the armor without breaking its magic. Zeke, now fully invested, asked if he knew where this master was currently hanging out. Galleon casually mentioned that, as always, his master was up in Himonas. No big deal, just a legendary blacksmith chilling in some remote northern location. Zeke, connecting the dots, realized that was the area where the Northern Duke was. Galleon was shocked, asking how he even knew about that. Most people from the central continent didn't even know about the Northern Duke, let alone his whereabouts. Zeke just shrugged it off, leaving Galleon even more curious. How did this guy know so much? A quick flashback hit Zeke something about Mohawk coming to know, but he shook it off just as fast. Zeke got up, thanking Galleon for all the info. He even threw in an invite, saying Galleon could come check out the metal while he was there if he wanted to know more about it. Galleon, caught off guard by the offer, stammered out a grateful response. Young master indeed. Zeke was already stepping up as a leader. Zeke muttered to himself about Himonas, thinking there was still plenty of time to handle his priorities before heading out. With a determined nod, Zeke started walking, his mind set on the tasks ahead. He arrived at Reinhardt Town, where the Reinhardt Merchant Group was based. Sitting in a triangle formation with Cliff and Melissa, Cliff expressed confidence that the production would go smoothly. But then Cliff hesitated, pointing out that setting up a factory for Soma production in the central continent would be a tough sell. Zeke agreed, knowing that the princess's involvement could tarnish Soma's reputation if word got out. Zeke then dropped a thought bomb: what if the production was already complete? Cliff considered it, suggesting it could be treated as medicine if they got safety verification from the magic tower first. Zeke's eyes lit up. That was it. They would set up the factory in the southern continent, produce the goods, and then import and distribute everything through Reinhardt. Smooth. Just as Zeke was feeling pretty smug about his plan, Melissa stepped in with a reality check. She pointed out that the merchant group didn't have the clout to set up a massive factory on another continent. She reminded him that they had barely managed to get a factory up and running for the rose disease antidote, so maybe they should think of another plan. But Zeke wasn't having it. He told Melissa not to worry, that they would handle the factory. He just needed the magic tower to give the okay for distribution. Melissa was shocked. Zeke clarified that this had nothing to do with his family. He was going to cover all the costs with his own money. Zeke then dropped the main point of the day, slapping a document on the table and telling Melissa to read it. Melissa was stunned as she read through the document. Zeke revealed that the Empire was working with the Scorpion clan to conduct human experiments for a synthetic poison. If the Rose disease was artificially made using magic, it might have been an empirical clinical experiment with Alencia as its target. Melissa was furious. She had a bad feeling about this, but she couldn't believe they would actually do that to civilians. Zeke Draker calmly explained to Melissa that he was sharing this information with her because the Empire's evil deeds needed to be kept secret for a while. Melissa's face was already turning red with anger. Melissa's expression darkened, her anger visibly growing. In a sudden burst of fury, Melissa slammed her hands on the table and demanded to know what Zeke meant. Zeke responded that they needed to keep the Empire's evil deeds secret, so they never did something like this again. Zeke understood Melissa's feelings but explained that the evidence they had was too weak to use for diplomacy. The Empire had slyly made it so that the Scorpion clan was the main agent behind the experiment. Since they were a famous black magic organization, human experiments weren't that much of a crazy concept for them. Zeke got up and continued, saying that the Empire would deny having a relationship with the clan and simply express their regrets, and it would be over with. Above all, Zeke believed it would be more advantageous for them to hold onto this information for now. Melissa, still furious, asked what he meant. Zeke explained that the Empire didn't know they had this information, and as long as they were carrying out these experiments extensively, there would be existing evidence that the Empire was more involved in this than it seemed. Melissa, starting to understand, asked if he wanted to obtain that evidence using this opportunity to properly pressure the Empire. Zeke confirmed Melissa's understanding and added that the real reason for their focus was to prepare for the future. Melissa, intrigued, asked what he meant by prepare. Zeke explained that if the Rose disease was just a temporary experiment in the Alencia conflict areas, there was a possibility that the Empire would test other synthetic poisons. Melissa listened intently, realizing the gravity of the situation. Zeke emphasized the need to create antidotes for these poisons beforehand. Melissa understood the urgency, imagining Alencia's soldiers fighting while being poisoned, unaware of the danger. Melissa thought for a moment and realized that if they prepared the antidotes in advance, they could prevent losses and gain the upper hand against the Empire. She started to see the bigger picture. Melissa concluded that she had made the right call, feeling a sense of determination and purpose. Melissa looked at Zeke, her mind racing with plans and strategies, feeling a newfound respect for his foresight. Zeke mentioned that he wouldn't be able to partake in meetings for a while since he would be busy in Valhalla. Melissa understood and expressed her hope to welcome him to Alencia if the opportunity arose, leaving the door open for future collaboration. Melissa began describing Alencia as a place filled with beautiful mountains and lakes. Zeke, intrigued, asked if she had been there before. Zeke mentioned he had heard many stories about how it was a good place and expressed his desire to visit it someday, hoping Melissa would show him around. With a polite bow, Melissa and Zeke said their goodbyes. Melissa wished him a relaxing trip as they parted ways. Meanwhile, Asta was already laying down, looking completely exhausted. Back in the training room, Diego was also laying down, feeling just as beat. He dramatically declared that they would die before their mission at this rate. Zeke, standing over them, told him not to say that and instead of wasting time, pick up the sword again. Diego groaned as he got up, calling Zeke the devil and acknowledging that the Draker bloodline was really in him. With a sudden burst of energy, Diego attacked Zeke, ready to train again. Zeke knew he needed to push Asta and Diego to ignite that fire within them. After training together for a week, they started to influence each other in ways they hadn't expected. Diego, usually the class clown, was now all business, listening to Zeke's every word like a seasoned pro. The change was noticeable, and it was clear that their training sessions were paying off. Just as they were getting into the groove, a familiar voice chimed in, acknowledging their hard work. Diego lit up like a kid on holiday, greeting the newcomer with his usual enthusiasm. Zeke turned to see Professor Andre approaching. He wondered what could have brought the professor there, sensing there was something important on his mind. Andre dropped the news like it was no big deal. They were being sent out for the Continental Public Conquest mission. Talk about a plot twist. And of course, since students couldn't just jet off on their own, Andre would be tagging along. Because what's a mission without a little adult supervision, right?